The main criticism of my training has always been like you're going too heavy too often. There's a diminishing returns on how strong can I get, but especially in equipped lifting, like if I can get better, improve my technique, improve my training, maybe that's going to be the next step.
I would say that those first 2 days of the week that you're using a more recovery-based training is more like a feeder-based training session.
And I got tons of crap about how heavy I deadlifted, but my best deadlifts came when I was deadlifting the most often and the heaviest.
All right, guys, we're back with another episode of Table Talk. Today, my guest is Bob Merkh. There's a lot of different angles to go here with explaining Bob's history. So I'm going to start off by saying he's a middle school teacher, but is now doing some teaching of preschool, the tiny little guys,
5-year-olds,
a husband and a father. And then I'll go with, a power lifter that's been competing for well over a decade, actually since 2008 when I'm looking there, and has totals in single ply, actually raw, single ply, multiply, and unlimited now, so all domains are in there. Has placed second in the WPO to Hoff twice, right? Yep. Twice. And is coming back from a weird ass quad tear, which we'll get into a little bit later, which I've never heard anything like this. And used the one thing that is probably the biggest descriptor when people would talk to me about you is the same two words kept coming up, and that's a great guy.
Oh, I'll take that.
Everybody describes you as, man, Bob's just a great guy, which is interesting in the sport of powerlifting that we're in.
And I'm glad that you talked about family and kids and all first, because that's always been like a clear-cut priority.
Yes, and it is.
I'm big on balance, and that's a big part of my balance.
So I wanted to sit down and talk to you about that, and to talk to you about your movement throughout the sport since you've been in the sport, because you came in 2008, I believe, in USAPL, and then competed for a little while, and then came out of the sport, then came back in because your daughter kind of sucked you back in.
I had some time raising the little kids, and then I decided, actually my wife decided that I was lifting at like a local gym, and she decided, because she knows I love powerlifting, it's just hard to do in New Jersey. We didn't have any good powerlifting gyms. And my wife decided that I should start my own little gym and put a little bit of money into it. Now, I don't think she realized I was going to have 20 sweaty dudes going through our house at the time. But that sort of rekindled the love. I had a couple
So when was that? What year was that?
So that's probably about 2011, 2012. Okay. And a couple, like the dads on my kids' football team were like, oh, you train, you work out, and they would come over. And then I got them involved. And that was the beginning of like me having a gym. And that's when I went back to competing. I think I took a break from like 2009 or 10 to like 2013. But from 2013 on, I don't think I've had less than 5 or 6 meets in a year, because I refound the love. And honestly,
sometimes 8.
I've had 8. My daughter though,
I got it right.
Because my daughter is a twin. When you have twins, they're always looking for something to make them stand out. And she just decided hers was going to be the gym. So she would come down there when I'd be training, and she would lift on her little, it looked like a Fisher Price weight bench. And eventually it got to the point where she would go to the meets. And one day she was 7. She's like, I want to do this too. Mm-hmm. So she has done probably 10 or 12 meets. She even did a multiply meet when she was 14.
So we're going to go down a side path here real quick, because the gym is in your basement, which means you have to go through your house to be able to get into the basement. Yep. And you've had a crew in there since 2011?
Yeah. So it started out small. I'd say from like 2011 through like 2014, there was like 5 or 6 of us. So I don't know if I would call it a crew. It's just like the local dads on my kids' football or soccer team. Actually, my daughter's soccer coach is still one of my lifters. So like they just got collected. But I started really running a team when I got together with a guy named John Ammerman and another one of my training partners who were like, they were local, and they were like more powerlifting oriented. And it was after I qualified for my first Arnold, where I was just looking for someone to help me because I didn't have that type of crew. So in 2014, we kind of came together, and I would go there and squat. And then eventually we just all moved it into my basement. So that was the beginning of what would be like my modern team.
So that sounds a little bit like heaven and hell, though.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're in and out of your house all the time. Yeah. Crews are kind of hard to keep together.
Yeah.
Right? Because now you're like the father of a whole nother family.
Yes, it's almost like I do have another family, and they're like, but it's cool because it's like my wife will tell you she has like a lot more kids than she used to, because powerlifters we're not always the best at taking care of ourselves, and she's like their therapist / mom / team mom. My kids get a couple extra uncles, and the one thing having it in your house is I have to be real careful who I bring in, because powerlifters aren't always I think we're the greatest people, but we're not all built equally, and I have to be a little cautious like who comes around the house. So generally, like, I would bring someone around individually at first, and they would train with me for a few sessions, and I'd try to get like a vibe, see what they were like. But we've been lucky. We've had some good people come through.
Well, you're training no matter what, because it's from what I gather, you train like every day, so it never stops. So that's kind of a given in there, where it went. I can see it being more problematic if you had off days, but then other people wanted to train on those off days. Yeah. And are there days of the week that are more heavily group focused than others?
Absolutely. We've always had like a schedule. So Saturday is always squat day.
Yeah.
Tuesday is always our big bench day. Friday is my secondary upper day, and Wednesday is my secondary lower day. So the 2 days where we have the most people are, Tuesday, Saturday. Generally, everyone tries to make those. The other days, I might have 5 or 6 guys. One big thing that most of my people do and subscribe to, which I think is really good for anyone, is everyone that lifts with me has a place to train. And what I mean by that is not like a local gym. Like, everyone's invested a little bit of money in their own success. So like, everyone who's coming here tomorrow has at least a power rack, a bench, some level of things to do, accessories, whether it be bands or
in their own place.
In their own place.
Okay. Yes.
Which has actually been fun, because as I got hurt, I was not as present, but no one missed a beat because they just sort of shuffled around where they would train.
Yeah.
So like my training partner, Alex, he's got a big shed. He's got a belt squat, he's got a monolift, he's got a competition bench. So he's got everything that you need to get through. Might not have all the toys, but certainly in a pinch, if I have to come up here, although they're going to be with me, if I have to go away for something, they have a place to train. So everybody who trains with me has a backup plan.
All right. Well, it's also a good thing too, because some days are going to be, at least kind of the way it's always run out here, Saturday squat day as well. So there's going to be people. Well, you hope there's always going to be enough people here to be able to squat or spot and do everything else. But then during the week, if it's accessory crap, that gives them the option to not have to drive, an hour and a half or whatever it is. They can just go down the street to where, or their own thing to be able to do that. So I'm taking from what you're saying, it's kind of like that too.
Yeah. And I also think, Donnie Thompson is a guy who's always said, like, you should invest. You want to be good, you should invest a little time and money, like, because you've got no excuse. If you got a gym or a place to train in your own backyard,
yes,
it's real hard to make excuses. Like, you can find an hour.
Oh, they can. They will. Trust me.
You can try.
They will.
But you're lying to yourself then, like, because I can't make an excuse. It's in my basement.
Yeah.
So I know I get the reputation of like training every day, and I do, but it's not as bad as people think. Like, I might take a Thursday, go down and do like 40 minutes of, like light volume work. I like to keep myself moving. It keeps me sane. I've got 3 kids and I'm a teacher. Like, so I'm not killing myself. Would I drive an hour and a half to do that work? Probably not. But since it's just going downstairs, it's something that I enjoy, and they all have that option now too.
Yeah, I'm kind of laughing in my head right now, because we'll get into the volume and the training later, but your light volume work is like 300 total reps for that session. That's a lot. You know what? That would be very light, because 1,500, I think, is what I heard.
300
is like the warm up.
I had 10 minutes and I had an off day or something was running. No, I'd say it's more like 750 to 1,500 is my light day.
So you play D1 ball. So when did powerlifting come on your radar? Did it come on before that or after?
So it came on before that. I got really lucky, actually. So when I played in high school, I went to a parochial school that was big for football called Holy Spirit, New Jersey. And I was really lucky because my sophomore year there, you go to the weight room for football. But most times you go to the weight room for football, it's someone's dad volunteering, and you bench and you squat, or they print out like a workout off of, T-Nation or whatever they can find, or Muscle and Fitness, and that's what you get, which is fine. But I had a guy, his name is Joe Kember, who was a competitive powerlifter, and he was in the late 80s, early 90s. And he was mostly a bench only guy, but he was still, he knew what conjugate was long before I even knew what that meant and things like that. And he was like a 500, 550 raw bencher at 198 and 220 back in the late 80s, early 90s, when that was like big numbers.
That's strong.
We actually just went through, because I had to find him on powerlifting, open powerlifting.
Was he on there?
He was, but I had to find him because it was written under, like, they had his name wrong. Because back then they would just write like a last name. So they had him under Kemper, with a P.
Okay.
So I fixed it for him. I emailed those guys over at Open Powerlifting.
Well, sometimes finding bench only guys from back there on there.
So what I had to do was I looked at his trophies and I found the meet, and I reverse looked them up. And once you start doing that, I was able to find them. But yeah, so like when I was 15, 16 and just starting to really fall in love with training, I would walk into a gym as he was finishing up. And him and I were just very close for a lot of reasons. If we go down that rabbit hole, he's like my mentor. I'm probably not alive, certainly not lifting like I am without that guy stepping into my life. But I would see him finish up. His last set was always 405 for 10. So I thought that was normal. Because, you know, when you're 15, you think like, oh, this is my coach. He's an adult.
Yeah.
So he would hit like 405 for 10. That was always his last thing. He liked to do that. And then we'd unload it and then we would start. And I would go home and my old man, you know, he's pretty strong too. He could bench like 405 for 1. And I remember thinking as a kid, like, man, my dad is weak. And then you progress in the sport a little and you think like, man, I was just lucky to be surrounded by. So like my normal was just strong.
When you say he was a mentor and it's 15 years old, that's an impressionable age.
Yeah.
Right. So as you know,
Absolutely.
right? You're a teacher, right? It's at your age.
Let me tell you.
And what about the training and all that made it stick? Because I'm sure from looking through there, you were playing every sport. So what about that was different?
I always loved athletics, but first off, he's just a massive man. I mean, like I said, he competed at 220, but it was just like slabs of muscle on this guy. He drove a 69 or 70 Mustang. Yeah. Which I would see him pull up in that. And it's like, how can you not be impressed as like a 15-year-old kid? And he was like freakishly strong. So I just decided like, yeah, that's a road I want to go down. So then, you start asking a lot of questions, this, that, and the other. And I wasn't always the most well-behaved, kid. And I was not in anything too bad, but like he was certainly like the type of guy who let me know, like, well, if you want to head down this road, like these are the things that you need to do. These are the things that you don't have time for anymore. And I'll help you, but I'm not wasting my time sort of deal. So like if you want the help, it's sort of my way. And that's what we're doing. And to this day, I still go there every Sunday and I bring him breakfast now. So and I still train there every Sunday. And he is the reason I have a basement gym and a 69 Mustang. Because like I said, I went out and bought the same car and he has a gym in his basement with all the toys. So I just
had you guys not crossed paths, where would you guess you would have been?
I don't know if I'm sure you don't know.
Yeah, I know.
But because obviously lifting was big for me. And then you go to college and I had like all my coaches in college were great. But I think the reason they loved me so much is I went there with knowledge already. Like my strength coach in college was he graduated from Penn State and they have a great strength and conditioning program. So he was thrilled to have someone in there who actually like loved lifting the way that he loved lifting. So it's a chance I might have gone down this road. But I was able to be put in the right direction early on by watching him. And I just think by being surrounded by that being my normal, like when I got to college, I was strong. I was like breaking gym records as a freshman, actually kind of embarrassed for the other lifters, but I was just lucky. And I just didn't realize how lucky I was because it was just my normal.
No, I get that. My first article I ever wrote for Powerlifting USA was like 92 or something. I can't even remember when. It was a long ass time ago. And it was about, I think the actual title was Strength. And it was about the perception of strength. Yeah. Because I came up like that, so the first gym I'm put in is a powerlifting gym and everybody's strong. I'm like, well, yeah. So my perceptions, okay, fucking 405 sucks,
So I see that to this day. I have this guy who's lifting with me now. And it's funny, since I'm a teacher and I've been teaching so long, I taught his fiance. We ran into them one time in Universal Studios, of all places, hung out for the day and loved her. They were moving back to New Jersey and he was a great guy. So he asked if he could start working out. Now, here's a guy, he played football in high school. He wouldn't mind me saying very out of shape, but wants to get back in shape. So he starts coming around and he's been around for a little over a year now. And he's, squatting like 405, 415, I think is his best, and benching close to 3. And he always calls himself like, oh God, I'm so weak. And I'm like, Tom, if you were to walk around like a retro fitness or like a regular gym, you're going to be turning heads. I said, the difference is you train here where, you don't have 3 plates on the bench. We're making fun of you, rightfully so. But you go anywhere else, you're going to be the big guy.
Because for me, it really didn't hit me. And I was asked to speak at an NSCA conference in Louisville. I'm going way back. Soon after I started helping Louis do seminars and stuff like that. And I remember being in their weight room and they had a record board. right? And I'm looking at the record board and I'm thinking, man, this sucks.
Yeah.
You know, this is not good.
That's how I felt in college.
It's not good. I'm like, this is really not good. And there was a group of coaches behind me that were talking about, look at that, they were all impressed. And that was like this stage of my life where I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, there's a serious gap here. And at the time I'm like, well, they're wrong, I'm right, you know? So,
yeah,
but it was a huge gap. I'm like, how can they think that a fucking 450 squat for a lineman is good? It shouldn't even be up there.
Terrible. Yeah.
And I'm like, that's a shitty bench, you know? And like all this stuff was like going through my.
I had that exact same moment my freshman year. You know, it was Division I AA football. So basically I went to a school that was like the worst school of Division I, but I did it on purpose because I just wanted to play.
Yeah.
So I get up there and like I'm a freshman. Freshmen compete last. So you're going, they have the results up of the day as you go in. And I'm going and I'm looking and I'm thinking like, first off, the squat test was 315 for reps. And I'm thinking to myself, like, that would suck. I don't know. I'm going to be tired.
I know.
I'm not prepared for this. Like, I did the whole 225 for reps thing. I was ready, and I thought that was normal. That was new. And I like look, and the best one's like 14, and I'm like, wow, that's.
Yeah, but when you're looking at 30 reps,
that's not very good. But like 315 for reps, I need to prepare for this. Like, I'm not going to be ready. I'm going to cramp up before I ever.
Yeah, not breathe.
Yeah, like I'm not conditioned for this. So I remember looking. Then they have the board of like the leaderboard. And there's like no squats in the sixes. And this is like an all-time leaderboard. These are Division I linemen. So that was my moment where I'm like, I guess maybe I'm really strong.
Yeah. And it's weird because it's the perception in the environment that creates that.
Yeah, and that's why environment, a good team is so important. People don't realize like you cannot get strong alone because you need someone to push you.
Somebody to push you, but it also, I think that perception's a big thing. Yeah. I mean, when you walk into some place and 350, everybody's benching 315, you know, and you bench 185, you're gonna see that 315 is possible.
In a perfect world, you want someone a little bit ahead of you, and you want someone nipping at your heels, and you got everything you need. You want someone to chase, and someone that you got to stay ahead of.
I would add to that somebody lower that you can teach. Yeah, you know, so then you have all three.
Well, I love whoever's chasing me. I love, like I was competing with Magnavita for years and years and years, and I used to always bust him. Now he sort of hung it up. He had some bad injuries, and he's not around. But like when he was there, it was essential to me because there were those days where as I'm getting older, I'm like, man, it would be real easy to stop. And you'd look over and it's like blood in the water for a shark. And I'm like, all right, he's not going to let me have this one today. Like, I'm going to need to put in the work to stay ahead. Why do I need to stay ahead? Because if I don't stay ahead, that means he's catching me. And you need that sometimes. That's like what it takes to do that extra set.
Now, when you paused from competing, it was due to your children, I assume, right?
Yeah.
And what was that like? Was there an identity crisis there, or you just didn't give a shit? I mean, how did you navigate that?
That wasn't too bad because I would say when I first started competing, I did it, I don't want to say half-assed, but like it didn't mean as much to me. I wasn't good. I was just happy to go there, and it was something fun to do. I didn't take it nearly as serious as I did. So I never stopped training. Matter of fact, I got strongest in those years. Because I'm still training just because I'm not competing. Like I'm down there, built the gym, was getting in tons of work. I had, I call him coach, the guy I was talking about earlier, my lifting coach. We still trained together all the time. So that's when I was getting strong. I didn't take, if you would have asked me back then, like I was a bench guy. Like I squatted. Okay. But, until you start really competing and realizing that's how you build a total, like I cared about bench day. That was like my favorite day. So it wasn't too bad, but once I started, I was all in. Like when I stepped on in 2013, I did like a raw meet, an RPS raw meet out in like Lancaster, and that's when like I got done that meet, and it was a really cool meet because it was the first meet for a couple good lifters. Carlos Reyes, it was his first meet.
Oh, really? Okay.
I wrapped his knees. Like he was like a strong man. He's like, yeah, I'm switching over to powerlifting. This is something that I'm looking to do, like less injuries, this, that, and the other. And Kevin Oak, he's competing. Back before he knew how to lift. So like my return, like what a cool freaking meet. Tone Barbaccio, like he was my back spot. And so like I picked a great meet and had so much fun. And I think that was the difference. It wasn't just my numbers. Like I had fun with those guys and I got to compete with other people and I wasn't winning. So like I did a meet where I got my ass kicked and I'm like, I don't like that. So we got to get stronger.
Was that wraps?
That was raw with wraps. I think I went 1600 at 220 raw with wraps. Yeah.
When did it move from, the single ply, it was just a bench meet, right?
That was a bench meet. I think I did one, I don't think they have it. I did one full power USAPL meet that I can't find.
Yeah.
But I'm open powerlifting will probably get it at some point. But yeah, so I did some USAPL stuff and then some WNPF stuff, and that was mostly raw with wraps. So some single ply really early on, raw with wraps from probably 2008 to like 2016, and that's when I jumped into equipped.
How were you navigating the meets and the federations at that time? Did you care, or did you just...
Honestly, I didn't really know. I just looked at what was close at first. So at first it was like, what's a meet? And they had, RPS was around. They had some up in Newark, which is fairly close, a nice, easy drive. I had met Gene, and it was fairly user-friendly. And then I didn't really branch out until, I think my first Arnold was 2014 or 2015, where I went out there. And that was like a culture shock, because that was like... everyone's a good lifter because you had to qualify for that. Like that raw. That was raw, and that was back when they had it like the Road Center. It was like the Saturday before. And we'd go over to watch the freak show, the bench freak show or whatever at like the main stage the next day. But I did that, and I actually had a really good meet, and I finished second in front of like lifters that I had read about and knew. And I'm like, oh, that was a cool experience. So that's when I decided, like, that's when I flipped the switch. Like, no, I want to do, like, I think I won $500. I'm like, you mean someone's giving me a check to lift weights? This will almost cover my hotel.
Yeah, almost a hotel, right?
Almost cover my hotel and entry fee.
So when did the equipment come in? When did that multiply come in?
So that was like a good stroke of luck. It's actually a funny story that I just posted on Instagram because someone asked me a question about like the craziest thing I ever did. In 2015, I think it was 15 or 16, I'm not sure. I squatted 805 at 242, raw with wraps. And I decided, probably not a smart decision, but there was a meet again the next weekend. I'm like, that cut was pretty easy. I think I'm going to keep this cut going. And I'm going to try and hit an all-time top 10 squat on Michael Song's list at 220.
And you cut to one.
So I just kept the cut. I never let myself fully recomp, and I just kept the cut going. And it was an awful week. I didn't train that week. I just kept losing weight, and I made it to 220. And I competed 2 weeks, 2 Saturdays in a row, and open up. I had like 750 or something, hit like 775 or 780, which I think whatever it was put me like 10th all time on Song's list. So I had 2 top 10 squats and 2 weight classes in 1 week, one calendar week.
No, that's some shit right there.
But then, like every dumb decision, sometimes you got to pay for it. I go to bench, and I guess like the massive dehydration and not really, that's when I tear my rotator cuff, supraspinatus goes. And, that sucked. I was able to finish the meet with like an 1865. I couldn't pull real well, but I got through it. And then you get your MRI and you realize it's blown. You're pretty pissed off. Well, the PT that I go to.
Did you have that fixed?
So I didn't. Because I go to the PT and he's like, well, you just tore the one piece of the rotator cuff. Like, you might hate me in 6 months or you might love me. I'm going to send you to physical therapy. They're going to try some stuff. And if you might be able to be okay with this, like you might be able to live with this, like at least short term. So we go, and as I'm doing it, I'm just bummed that I can't train. So remember when I told you I met up with that other gym? Well, they were all multiply guys when I was raw. So when I'm training with them, I'm just doing like neutral dumbbell stuff, like what I can do as I rehab my shoulder. And the one guy, John Ammerman's like, well, why don't you just try a bench shirt? He's like, he's like, I don't know. It might, you might be able to bench. He's like, because if it's your rotator cuff, he's like, it might, it's like a fake rotator cuff. He's like, worst case scenario, you can't do it. I'm like, I don't know. I tried that and I fucking hated it. Like everyone, when they put a bench on, I'm like, this is stupid. Like, but it was enough. I hated it, but it didn't hurt. So I'm like, all right, well then the next week, they're like, well, why don't you try a pair of briefs? Whatever. Like, and then I loved it. Like from the second I took a squat and a pair of Predators, I was sold. I'm like, this is it for me. I want to squat all the weight because it was the way I squatted raw just translated naturally. I think my first time squatting in briefs, I squatted like 900 pounds.
What was your impression of multiply before all this happened? Coming from raw.
I didn't really have a problem with it. I just love all lifting. The only reason, honestly, it's what I like all the lifters that I looked up to from the old like powerlifting USA magazines that I had on my wall and still have hanging up in the gym from when I bought them are all multiply lifters. Yeah. You got the Donnie 3005. I've got the Goggins Squats 11. Like I was always a fan of strength sports, even before I knew what powerlifting was. I just loved to page through it. Sure. So like that's what lifting was. I just didn't have anyone to sort of open my eyes to it. And when you're going to be multiply, you kind of need help. Oh yeah. Not just coaches, but you need training partners who are going to explain. Because if you put on a bench shirt for the first time and you don't know what you're doing, you're going to hang that up real quick. So I had no negative impressions, and why be good at one thing when you can be good at a bunch of them? So I decided I was going to do a multiply meet right away. Bombed, of course.
Well, when you say right away, I need to clarify that.
It was like 4 weeks later.
That's what I figured, like 4 weeks later.
I'm like, can someone give me one of them gray suits or those tan suits? Like what? Yeah, one of those. I don't even know it's a Leviathan at the time. Like they put me in one and I squatted 1,000. I'm like, all right, well, I'll just go.
What went the worst?
So I got a squat. What went the worst is I'd been a raw lifter and I didn't realize that, when you do a multiply meet and you squat multiply and you still have to bench multiply, that's a different animal. So even though I was 100% in the gym, you got to open with a big bench after squatting big weight, and I just didn't have any stamina for it, no gas. I just threw them all into the rack behind me, and that was my first ever bomb. And I'm like, I guess I got to put a little effort and energy and thought into this. So then we took a little time and got me organized again. I did a meet later that year, and it went well.
What's well?
I think I totaled 2380 in my first finished multiply meet. I went 955, 725, like 700 or something like that. And that was out at Rita West's gym when it was Hercules out in Syracuse.
Was that 275? What was the class?
That was 275, like a light 275 back then because I didn't want to cut weight. So, and that was with my daughter wrapping my knees. No, my daughter calling my depth and my wife wrapping my knees.
Was she competing at the time?
She was competing at the time, not at that meet though.
Yes.
But she had competed a bunch of times.
Right,
it's funny because a lot of people were like, I can call your depth. You don't need her to. And I'm like, well, she's my training partner. So like, she's perfectly capable. She's like 10 at the time. And she would get offended. She's like, I know what depth is. And she does. Yeah.
So. With these like 300 meets that you've done, how many of those, and I'm assuming a lot, but how many of those were you were going maybe to help her or you're going to help somebody else? And then last minute, you're like, you know what, I'm here.
A big handful of them. I kind of got like a reputation for that. Like if I have a training partner who's doing a bench meet and I got to be there, because I had a couple guys who did some bench meets for a while. I'm like, and it's a full power meet. So you'll see some of the numbers. I'll have like a meet where I went like 1160, 135, 135.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I'm already here. Like it's a training day.
It's a training day.
So I just did that. Or when I was trying to get ready to pull something big, I wanted to do, like, I know that I did a meet where when I pulled 805, it was like 5 weeks out from the WPO and everyone thought it was nuts. And I'm like, well, this is my heavy deadlift day and they're doing a meet. So what's the difference if I pull it here? I get, it's a different place, which change of setting is always good. I always tell lifters before you do a meet, you should try and change your environment, take a trip, go somewhere else so that you're not used to your equipment. Sure. Plus it's a crowd, different bars and things like that. Now, what I ended up doing that day is just because the meet director asked me, I was warming up my squats. I was squatting in briefs in the warm-up room. He's like, hey, just do a full meet. Not deadlift only. So I did take 1,010 squat and briefs that day. So
that's where
that's a very Bob Merkh thing to
where
do. I'm like, whatever, I'll just do it.
There used to be a club in Cleveland called Black's Health World, which was kind of like a West Side, before West Side, but it was a competitor of West Side too. But Louis and John Black got along. It was a big fucking strong ass gym. Yeah. A lot of world records came through, and I actually considered going there instead of West Side. It was a decision process I had to make after college. They did exactly what you're talking about. So if Saturday they trained all 3 lifts heavy. So if there was a meet, then why not just go?
Yeah,
and then. The rules that kind of with that at least John Florio explained to me was not all the times are you going to get emotionally aroused.
Yeah.
It's just a training day. Just fucking do the training day. Some stay with the numbers that are supposed, especially when you get close to actually peaking for something. Yeah. But then what did he say? It was something like, and it wasn't, he didn't use the word caveat, but it's like, but there's a caveat. If it feels fucking good, take it. Yeah. And I'm like, well, no, wait a minute.
I know exactly what he's saying. And the one time I listened to myself, I squatted 1160 and I was actually 308 because I think I weighed in at like 280.
Yeah.
At like a metal militia meet that I did. I was out there just handling, and I knew that Delafave and Skiba were competing, so I want to be there to watch. And I squatted 1160, but the deal was I had a meet coming up and I wasn't supposed to take more than a second. So I'm like, all right, call it there. Well, when I go back and I look at that squat, now I've never officially squatted 12, and I'm like, man, maybe that day might have been the day. Like you hear Luke Edwards talk about the day he could have pulled 9.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fuck, man. If I don't ever end up squatting 12, I'm going to look back and be pissed off at myself that day. The one fucking time I have a plan and follow it is because I took 1115, took 1160. That was the plan. Then I just took my gear off and got yelled at by my wife because she didn't think I was doing a meet that day. And I'm like, you should know better. Like everyone knows.
Did you start to dial this back over the last couple of years when the placing in the WPO
with the WPO, I tried to train for them a little bit more with a plan.
I like the pause and look.
Like a little bit more with the plan. Now I'm easy to, like I said, I'm easy to get off plan because before the 2019 WPO, that's when I pulled that 805 5 weeks out, and I did end up taking a squat and technically doing a full power meet that day, 5 weeks out. But I don't think it was a bad move. It worked out okay for me. So might not be the smartest thing, but it was fun. Lifting should be fun.
Well, it should be. I mean, that's another thing.
That's one thing. I'm always having fun. Yeah. You'll never get to accuse me. I've never had a bad day on the platform. I had a little bit of a bad day with the last WPO, left a sour taste in my mouth, but even that's water under the bridge. I'm trying not have a bad day out there.
Well, that comes with the territory. Though.
Yeah.
I mean, shit like that always comes with the territory where that's the other part that came with, the great guy is every time you see him in a meet, he's having a good time. Yeah. So that's infectious.
Fun. Yeah,
right?
It should be. And we're lucky to do this. It always kills me. I made a post the other day about this. It kills me when people are like, I have to train. I have to. Like, you don't have to do anything. Like, you're lucky that you get to do this, and we have a limited time. So like, enjoy it.
Yeah.
Because especially as I get closer to the end, I'm like, man, I'm not admitting that I'm close to the end, but the reality is the sun sets on everyone at some point. And it's like, you got to enjoy the journey and have some fun with it. And it's a privilege to get to go out there and do these competitions. You don't have to do it. That almost cheapens it when you say have to train. You don't have to train. You're lucky you get to train.
Yeah. It's I guess with age comes wisdom with that one, right? Because it's their perspective is limited.
Yes.
Right. Because if that's all they have, and literally that's all they have, then it's kind of crazy too, because that's going to make it harder for them to recover because they're going to be more stressed about everything that they're doing, which circle around, it makes their ability to progress inhibited.
Yeah.
Because
in the early days, you're making gains so fast and things like that. You really don't gain perspective until you've had some struggles, a long plateau, an injury, things like that you have to overcome. I think a lot of times that gives you perspective. I know my leg, and this is the first major injury I've had where I can't compete and I want to, and I can't. So that's given me a nice perspective on things. And, if I can't train, I might as well learn from it and take something positive away from what was a negative. So with age and a little bit of that, you get some perspective. And
outside of the shoulder, is that the first major injury that you've had? That
was the first major injury. And I mean, I've had obviously injuries to take you out for a month here, 6-8 weeks there, but nothing that there was nothing I could do. No way around it, no way through it. I had to have the surgery. I was going to be laid up. I was in that brace, riding around on a scooter. Probably could have snuck a bench meet in, and I considered it. But I'm like, that's probably not smart. And I'm trying to be a little bit better.
Yeah.
So, because like I said, I want to keep myself around as long as possible. So moving forward, I got to make some better decisions. And that's what we're working on now.
What was the lead into it? So give me the 20 weeks out leading into the quad tear, then the quad tear.
So let's see.
So you were training, was it the WPO or something?
I was getting ready for that. I actually was getting ready. Pharrell had a big meet, and was it July out in June or July in Lake Erie? I can't remember exactly, but early summertime. I was getting ready for that because he was putting up some nice prize money and things like that. And I want to take it. I forget, it was $6,000 plus $1,000 for individual lifts. And it was an unlimited meet. And I had done one unlimited meet before, but didn't have a great day. Really an off squat day for me. So the total wasn't what I wanted. I think I totaled 2785, which was way too close to my regular multiply total. And I remember thinking to myself, I can get away with training for this unlimited meet and then have enough time to prepare myself for the WPO. It'll be perfect. So I was getting ready for that. So I don't know exactly how many weeks out it would have been, but getting ready for that. And I had a great day. I totaled 2905, take some prize money, this, that, and the other. Training for the WPO went really well, I thought. The result wasn't what I wanted. I ended up bombing on squats, which was a tough one to swallow. I've never actually bombed on squats. So that was the first time. I'd bombed before up on bench, injuries, things like that, but never had I bombed on squats. So that was a bitter pill to swallow. And the last thing I did was a weird bench only meet that I did out where Dave Kingwater was having a big meet. I think it was called the Tom Brown Memorial Meet, and he has it, and it's a big fundraiser for the Special Olympics, which I'm heavily involved in New Jersey. So I heard that, and I'm like, this is great. because I run the powerlifting Special Olympics in New Jersey. He does in New York. And he brings me and Rich Putnam out there, and he wants to have us go like head to head. And this is early December. And he's going to have like an unlimited bench off. He brings judges out, and it was like a whole big, he had us in like a big fenced in room. It felt very like powerlifting meets the WWE. And I had a really cool day. I go 3 for 3 on benching, which I don't know that I've ever done, and go 10, 10, 10, 60, 1100. And that was like my last good memory before trying to I was going to regroup. And I was going to fix some imbalances in my training that I noticed that I had like leading into the WPO. And as I was attempting to fix those imbalances, that's when the quad goes. Because I realized that I was strong, but I was only strong in like one position. Like I did all my squats in the same stance, all my benches typically with the same grip. And I felt like that was limiting me because I was noticing that I just didn't really have any quads. Mm-hmm. Lo and behold, attempting to strengthen my quads ended up taking one from me. But I was starting to try and become more self-aware anyway, because, the aches and pains were adding up. And I was trying to figure out, how can I stop trying to be stronger and start trying to be better, I guess, was sort of like the message I gave to myself. Because, there's a diminishing returns on how strong can I get. But especially in equipped lifting, if I can get better, improve my technique, improve my training, maybe learn to take a day off and rest a little bit more and just be more purposeful with how I laid things out, maybe that's going to be the next step. And as I was attempting to do that, I think it was a little too late.
With the quad, it didn't tear at the knees, you were telling me. So
way up high, up by the adductor.
Did they have any explanations for that?
So the explanation that he gave me, like I said, my surgeon was perplexed at first because it was such a weird area to tear it, so high up in the leg, almost all the way to the groin. You saw the video. It was really high. Yeah. And he actually had me get, I think it was either 4 or 5 MRIs trying to figure out what else was wrong, because I think it was like the vasculus intermedius or something like that was the part of the quad that completely tore off. And he said that happens, but he's never seen it in isolation, like something else should have been wrong. And all I was doing was some close stance, really deep Olympic Paul squats. That's what I was doing. It wasn't even that heavy on the bar, but I think because my position changed, that's what put the tension on the quads. And he described the injury to me as in Hidori's was like a fraying rope. He's like, it wasn't like a trauma. It was like the injury had been there and it was just sort of like the straw. Mm-hmm. And that's when it popped. He's like, because you can see all the, I forget what he used to describe it, but all the, not arthritis, but the tendon itself was damaged all around it, all the calcium deposits or whatever it was. And he's like,
arteriosclerosis,
something like that. So he said so it was not something that you did specifically. It was basically something that was going to happen. With
him in there, did he look at all the other tendons that are around that area?
On that leg, everything was good. He said he was very shocked. So just something, and I'm wondering, maybe it's the fact that I always squatted the same way, that I was just beating up the same area. I actually asked him, can we just do an MRI of the other leg while we're here?
Just assume, right?
Can we just assume that this one's bad and maybe go in there? He's like, it doesn't work like that. No. Just go in there and reinforce it.
No, but through this rehab, you do assume that it's that way, because it's not going to change what you're going to do recovery-wise.
Nope.
How long did you wait until you had it reattached?
I think it was between 2 and 3 weeks, somewhere less than 3, more than 2. It's actually because it happened right before Christmas.
Yeah.
So you got to realize this is literally Christmas week. Of course, perfect timing that this is happening. My surgeon, the surgeon that I wanted, because he had done Carson Wentz's knee, he was a good surgeon for Rothman Orthopedics, and it was a great experience. If you can describe your surgery as a great experience. But he basically said, you can get someone to do it right away, but you want me. You specifically, you want to wait. He's like, I'm on vacation. I'll schedule you now. It was early January. He's like, we'll get you taken care of. And he was awesome.
So it wasn't you trying to figure out how bad it was?
No, he was really helpful, actually. I can't say enough nice things about Dr. Tucker from Rothman Orthopedics.
Well, what made you think that this, because I'm sure you've pulled other things and had other injuries, what made you think that this one was worse than the other things that you've had?
I could literally see the thing pop and I could not flex my quad. I couldn't for the life of me.
Yeah, but if it's a pec, it's kind of like that too.
My brain was sending but it was a couple days. I went right to the ER because it turned black. I mean, it was bad right away. It was, my whole leg was black. Okay. And I'm looking at it and I can't flex this quad. The weird thing was it wasn't that painful. I was walking. Mm-hmm. I just couldn't I couldn't walk up a stair. I had to hobble because I couldn't contract that quad muscle at all. So I knew something was wrong. It was kind of an indescribable feeling. I could send the signal to my leg and it just was not working.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's how my pec was that way because the tendon came out. And except with when mine came straight out, I had no bruising at all.
Yeah.
Zero. It's just my whole pec was under my nipple.
Oh.
And I'm looking, I remember Louis saying, you just pulled it. I'm like, dude, I don't know, man. Like there's like, it's like,
it used to be up there.
Like this is not right. And same type of situation. I couldn't flex it because it was detached. But in certain positions, I would always, because I strain my pecs a lot, you know, so I always have these tests, lay on the floor, arm out. If I can just lift it off the ground, that's cool, because the next day maybe I get a little higher. That fucker stayed stuck on the ground for like a month. Yeah. And I'm still thinking, it's going to come back. Everything else has. Yeah. And that's a commonality that I see when I'll talk to other lifters, that the tendon comes basically out, like what you're talking about is you're kind of just fucked. Yeah. Like, and you know it because you can't.
I knew it. I laid on the ground. I wouldn't let them stop training either. Yeah. I'm like, everyone finish your fucking training. I'm like, no, let's get. I'm like, no, just let me be miserable. I'm just going to lay here. I'll be worse if you guys stop training. Yeah. So they literally, as I'm laying on the ground, they're finishing their squats. Well,
the crazy thing is it doesn't, as you said, it doesn't hurt that. But
no, I was just pissed. I was seething.
You're mad and you can't move it. And it's like the ones that hurt, you're like, man, this hurts like a bitch, but thank God it hurts. Yeah. Because at least there's a signal. Yeah. So I guess that's a good thing. Yeah. And so it's how long were you immobilized with that? Because this is weird to me because it's so much higher, right? Yeah. So how long were you immobilized compared to if it was around the knee?
Yeah, I guess they put that brace on me, you know, that full immobilizing brace, and told me I was going to be out of work for like 5 weeks or something. I was out for like 3 days because I was able to get around pretty well in the brace. And lucky it was my left leg, so I could still drive. Getting in and out of the car was hilarious, though. I had to like lean the seat all the way back and like worm my way up the seat. I was in the gym, not the day after surgery, one day after that. So I wasn't out of the game. But in terms of like immobilized, I was at PT right away. I think I had range of motion back in like 4 or 5 weeks. It was not long. It just took a long time to get the strength. I'm still getting the strength back. Range of motion was probably about 5 or 6 weeks. And I'm coming back a lot faster than they said I would. But again, like you said, it was a weird tear. And even the doctor acknowledged that. He's like, I'm giving you, like, my guesses are based on other surgeries, like when it comes off of the knee, this, that, and the other. He actually said 12 to 18 months, but I don't think because of where this tear was and how it reattached, I don't think that necessarily applies to me.
Well, there's a lot of things where I'm not a doctor, I'm not a physicist, but you come in with a stronger strength base, obviously that changes how the recovery is going to be. You know, if I knew when I had my hips done, I went in as strong as I could be. Like I'm peaking for it, right? Just to have a stronger base.
Ready for your recovery.
Yeah. After the 3 weeks or whatever it's going to take for it to become usable, right? Because it's kind of just like gimping, you know, it's just not worth a shit.
Similar to what he told me. He told me I wasn't allowed to do anything for 3 months. He's like, 3 months is how long it takes for that all to become...
For a normal, for a normal
3 months, and then you can start playing with, and then use your head. But like, don't do anything before 3 months.
Now,
so that was the torture.
With your recovery, how much work have you done? And this is just out of curiosity. How much work have you done unilaterally?
So much, actually. It's funny. I went to a great physical therapist. He was awesome, very helpful. I mean, we did blood flow restriction right away, all sorts of not stim, but like the EMS stimulation, dry needling, like everything you could think of, he was doing it. But then with my gym, I'm not set up for everything. So actually, I've been a proud Planet Fitness member for a few months because I wanted to be able to do that unilateral work to bring this leg back. So like things in isolation, leg extensions, hamstring curls, like stuff like that. Even like some hack squats and like leg presses, things that I don't normally have the luxury of doing since I've got more of a powerlifting setup. So I've been doing that for the past few months. And a couple things. Number one, obviously it's good for rehabbing the injury. Number two, I think it's good things that probably would have benefited me to do earlier. Like especially like the full range of motion stuff, just making myself a little bit less rigid, like deep leg presses. No, not even crazy heavy, but like just going through that full range of motion and not being so tight has felt good. And I'm putting on like actual size. Like it's weird. Things that you don't normally do.
Funny how that works.
Because you don't do it. Yeah. It's like my biceps. I like put inches on my biceps. I never did curls, but now that my legs hurt, I'm like, I guess I'll add like an arm day.
Yeah. Well, I'm
just looking for stuff to do because I get bored.
At what point did you start? The question is, what point did you start squatting? But I need to define what I mean by squatting. Yeah. So what point did you start simply just doing box squats or some type of free body weight squat on a high box with no weight just to reestablish the signal.
As soon as they took that stupid brace off me at like 5 or 6 weeks, we were doing like I would call it a high box squat, but they would only let me do it at the physical therapists.
Okay.
So like they gave me like a really high 30-inch box and I would squat down to it, stand back up.
Yes.
Just to start going through that. And they slowly lowered that box for me week to week. And then they got me doing split squats, which were god awful.
Well, with those squats, how much of that were you doing at home without them?
Oh, tons.
Okay. Okay.
I wasn't supposed to, but once I got to 3 weeks, I started squatting in what I'll call a full range. It took me a little while to be able to get there, but like as close to a full range squat as a multiply lifter likes to go in their raw.
The reason I'm asking this is, again, I'm not a physical therapist. I'm not a doctor, right? But I've been fucked up enough in the shoulders, benches. And when I talk to other lifters that have gone through the same things, I see the same patterns. We have the recovery stuff to do. But I think at the same time, we also all kind of, it's this subconscious level. Maybe it's more conscious for me now. I want to reestablish the motor pattern that fucked me up. And I want to make sure I'm pushing with both feet with the same force.
Yeah. 2 things about that. Number one, I was lucky because this physical therapist said, like, as soon as you can get full range of motion back, like your strength will come. He's like, I assure you, you might not feel like it. You're going to be like, your strength will come back. He's like, but what you need to make sure that you do is do not skip the range of motion. He's like, you need to get range of motion back first.
Of course,
because that might not come back. He's like, so that was a big thing. So he wanted me squatting full range, even if it was just body weights, even if it was just a bar. They had me with I had my bamboo bar, hanging 10s from it just because I had to have something on there. Just going through the range of motion first. And in terms of like watching to make sure, I still have to do that because even though I'm feeling a lot better now, if I video, there's a natural tendency to lean towards the good leg. And last thing I need to do is lean towards the good leg and make it the bad leg. So my training partners, that's what they're watching for right now. So instead of just the normal backs and, stay tight and brace and the normal cues, I have a guy who specifically just watches my hips.
Yes.
But when I'm squatting right, it feels like I'm leaning to my left because that's the weak leg.
That's what I'm talking about. So that's
like, it's like a weird feeling because I'm not. If I'm squatting correct, it feels like I'm leaning left because that leg just has less gas power right now, less force. Yeah,
and that's where
important.
That's where I'm going is because if that's delayed for too long, then you're always going to have this funky imbalance. Yeah, then you're going to try to correct it, which is actually.
And I think that might have been what helped this leg become a problem in the first place. The shoulder that I blew out in 2015 was this one. I always had this weird tendency when I squatted to twist. And when I replicate that on a way down and you feel like where that places the pressure, that twist in the hole is exactly where I tore my quad. Coincidence? Possibly.
Well, there's always compensation.
But there's always going to be something like that twist, that compensation could have been a reason for the injury. So we're trying not to go down that hole again.
No, it's a spiral. Yeah. Like it's because there's always compensation patterns that are going to form and you got to kind of guess or have somebody who knows what they're doing kind of help you figure that out because that will lead to that. And then that will lead to something else. And then it just keeps spiraling all around where there's obviously if something tears, there's going to have to be some reestablished kind of connection with that. How conscious of you were, because I watched you walk around earlier, of your gait when you were going through recovery at the very beginning, like your steps, how you walk and what's it look like?
I was conscious because they made me be conscious.
Good.
I've never been like, I always kind of waddle. Like when I was born, my feet were like duck walked out, which is great for squatting. Like I made fun of when I was a kid, but then all of a sudden it's like the perfect squat position. So it ended up being more of a gift than a curse. But yeah, he made me be very cautious of my gait. And also like steps. He's like, you're going to have this tendency to want to use your good leg to go up steps instead of like walking up naturally. And he was right because you don't even notice yourself doing it. So like I have to make sure that I like walk up the steps the right way and, do everything. It's still a very conscious thought because you don't realize how easy it is to just go away from the pressure of the bad leg.
I'm glad you're saying this because it's a lot of lifters are in this school like, fuck the physical therapist. They don't know what they're doing. But these two things here.
Now, I will say I got lucky. Like my physical therapist my surgeon had operated on one of my training partners. He has done his shoulder, I think, 6 times. So like he is, and he was a lifter himself, which is really nice to have a doctor who, and when I say a lifter, like he's been around powerlifting. So that was nice because he understands it. Like even just understanding the mentality of our sport, like when he was talking to me, he said all the right things. Like he didn't tell me I was done, didn't tell me what I couldn't do. He was more like, this is what you want to do. This is what I need you to do in order to be able to do that. So like he talked, he was a great doctor for a powerlifter. There was no, this is, you can't do. Matter of fact, I think I asked him, will I be able to squat as much as I used to? And he looked at me, he's like, well, if you can't, it won't be my fault. And I'm like, he's like, well, I'm going to do the surgery perfect. Like whether you can do the things you need to do and rehab it correctly and get as strong as you are, that's a you problem.
That's a good answer.
I loved the answer.
No, I like that answer. It was
like, I'm like, oh, that's like just the right amount of arrogance and like, I'm that good. It won't be like, you won't tear that again, but I can't tell you if you have the balls to get back under the bar and do it.
That's the best answer I've ever heard.
You're going to have to do the work.
Yeah.
And I heard that and I'm like, this is the perfect answer for me. And then he sent me to a physical therapist that he thought would be the best fit for me. And he works generally with pro baseball players. He does a lot of like shoulder stuff.
Yeah.
But he sent me to him because he thought like the mentality, like the athletes that he worked with, he thought he would have a good understanding, and he was right. Because it was like, all right, what do we need to do to get you where, like, what do you want? This is what you want. And what do we need to do to get you there? So he actually, like my physical therapy routine was based around like powerlifting movements.
Yeah, there's
like,
good ones.
He did his own homework. So like when I'm doing box squats, I'm doing that because he knows that's something that he wants me to be able to do. And he actually even offered to come out to my gym to watch me in the element and did. He came out to the gym and watch me. Now, I do think it's a special case. Like he enjoyed it. Like he
does.
Kind of cool.
He
like,
does.
And he's watching the videos and he like liked the stuff. So for him, I think it was a good experience as well. But yeah, I got very lucky. Partially it's I'm going to take credit. Like I made sure I found the right.
Well, I was going to say you're going to if it wasn't.
But I did find the right doctor, and he gave me a great physical therapist. So taking some ownership and not just going to the surgeon they tell me to, like making sure I found the right fit was crucial.
Yeah, you would have found the right physical therapist if this one was bad.
Yes, I wouldn't have been happy, or I would have. Like, and even like when I decided I was done, I'm like, I was going like 3 times a week, and then that became like a hassle because it's getting in the way of my actual training. And I basically said, can I just come on Mondays? You show me the things that you want me to do. And rather than spend an hour doing them, like, can I just spend an hour with you, show me the things and write it out for the week, and I'll just go home and do it? And that's what I did. And
well, I think what you were saying, because he wanted to come see, how you train. It's that sample of physical therapist grouping, I guess, people, they love that kind of stuff because it's different than what they do every single day over and over and over, which is listen to people bitch about how bad it hurts to get range of motion back. And so now they have this case like, wow, this would be cool. And then there's a little bit, maybe there's a little security there too, where they know, well, if he gets hurt, he ain't gonna sue me.
Right. Yeah.
So that opens it up a little, because a lot of this is kind of formed around them either not knowing what they're doing or scared that they're going to be responsible.
Like, he would admit, like if he didn't know something, like he would do homework. So like, I don't know what a box squat is. Like send me some videos. And then he would come at me explaining it in some very technical jargon that didn't always like make sense to me, but like he was doing the homework to learn the things in order to make me recover as well as possible.
If memory serves correctly, was it last week you squatted 800?
I think, a couple of weeks ago when I went out to Delaware to train with Bruce Mason was out there. It was like a nice group. And I'm like, I got to get out there. I know that I specifically took 895 and I did it on purpose. It was briefs and wraps and it was a little high. Matter of fact, I got done. I was real happy, and everyone's got to have the training partner. I have this training partner, Alex Bertolino, and like I was real happy, and he gave me that moment. But then, like the next time I see him, he's like, "So, just so you know, that 895 wasn't a good squat. It was good for you and good for you mentally, but like you need that training partner." So I think last week is when I did. It was like a low 800s, but it was a good squat.
How did it feel?
It felt great. I haven't had too much pain other than the very beginning. There hasn't been much pain. I'm aware of it and it feels weak. But there hasn't been, luckily, knock on wood, a lot of pain. And I'm not letting myself, for once, I'm like following a plan. Like I haven't just loaded the bar. Like I think every workout I've ended, I have had a little bit in the tank, and that's not always been the case with me.
Well, you've pulled your body weight down since the surgery too.
And that was part of it, is I don't want to, and I'm in like different gear. I'm not in my normal gear, and I don't have like number goals, and I don't have a meet to get ready for. This is all like, because I know myself. If I had a meet that I was training for and I was my normal weight and I had a good squat day, I'd be wondering like, well, how good can I make it?
What's the strategy behind losing the weight outside of that?
Well, a couple things. It started because physical therapy was easier to do when I'm not 290 pounds. Like, and I didn't see a reason. It's not real hard for me. I'm not like meant to be a big guy. So it wasn't real hard for me to drop some weight. It was just a matter of like cut some sugar back and, don't drink a few regular energy drinks and switch to like some sugar. It wasn't some great challenge, because when you work hard to keep weight on, it's not real hard to take weight off. So it made physical therapy a lot easier. But honestly, a big part of it was that I didn't want to be competing with, the ghost of powerlifting's past. Like before the injury, I knew that if I'm down a couple pounds, I'm just training for fun, but also, to keep the strength. I knew that I would have less of a chance of chasing the dragon and doing something stupid. And we're going to Panama with my family in August in a few weeks, and I want to look jacked in Panama. So who doesn't? Like, you might as well.
I seriously doubt that the Panama being jacked is. I could see having the weight lower because you're going to be walking around more.
It's a tertiary benefit. I'm going to take some cool pictures, and I'll look maybe my wife. Maybe people will stop thinking my wife is my daughter for a couple weeks.
That's what was it? Justin Harris, one of the diets where I went down for a stupid reason. I don't know if it was him or John Meadows, whoever it was. All I remember them saying is, when you are lean, just make sure to get as many pictures as you can, because you're not going to want to do it again.
I know.
And then you just go back up and it's fine. But it's like,
what's funny though is I've actually learned. I've been working with this guy Seth Bowles, who is just in like North Carolina, and he's learning from another Seth up in Canada, Seth Albsworth. I'm sure you know him. Seth's a great guy. Like, he's been teaching me a lot about food as I like lose the weight, and I feel like I'm eating as much now as ever. I'm just eating better, like smarter choices. And other than the fact it's like a little bit of preparation more than what I'm used to, I kind of like it, and I feel good. I still feel strong. Like, my strength is not down nearly as much, and I'm using like upper body as a metric because like that isn't hurt. Like, my strength is not down nearly as much as I feel like it should be for losing like 40 pounds. And now it's got me thinking, like, maybe if I take my diet a little bit more serious, instead of just like all calories are created equal, as I gain the weight back, he seems to think that, and he wants to be in charge of it. He's like, when you go back, like, let me be in charge of that too, not just helping you take it off. Like, let's see how jacked we can get you at 290, 300. Let's put the weight back on the right way and see if that makes a difference. So that's an area of my training where I never really gave a whole lot of attention. Big was big. And if it was 5 McDoubles to get my calories in, I just made sure. The only thing I really tracked before was like, am I getting enough protein?
When your weight.
And that's like, does my gear fit? Am I getting enough protein to get stronger? That was it. But now that I'm, putting a little extra emphasis into my diet, it's an area that is like a rock I haven't turned over yet. So I'm considering turning that one over as I get ready for the next meet, and, putting the weight on with some better choices.
What's the heaviest you've gotten?
Let's see. When I did that meet where I got to finally a squat on the books at 308, I think I was like 288, 290, somewhere around there. I've always tried. I wanted to be a 308er so many times, and every time I get myself up right around that 290, it's the diminishing returns. Like, it hits like I'm just too tired. My squat always goes up. Way up. Squat is great. But then like you still have to deadlift, and the deadlift tanks.
With the gear today, can you bloat going into, because I would have to make up the difference as much as I could the last week. Same situation that you had. It was really hard for me. Yes, I could have tried. I could have done other things to be able to do it, but it was just to be fucking 294, 295 or whatever it was hard. 300 was,
it creates a challenge.
But it got to a point for me, it started really fucking my suit up. You know how my gear fit. Is the gear more forgiving now with that?
I would say so, yeah, because I still squat like I'm one of the guys who squats like an ultra pro. Those things are super forgiving. Because you adjust the tightness.
Okay.
And obviously my briefs, you get what you get, but briefs are briefs. Even if they're a little loose, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. But I can crank that suit however much I want. And the side panels, you've got a lot of area to make it up. Bench shirt's obviously a different animal. You need those to fit, but I can bench, and I have a few different shirts at a few different sizes, and I'm pretty good with anything. It can be tight, and I'm usually pretty fine. Those new bench shirts, I feel like there's a huge window in the unlimited shirts.
Oh, the band shirts.
The band shirts, you because there's no real sleeve. I mean, it's essentially like an open area here. You're just loading the elbows and triceps. So you've got a lot more wiggle room there. And
so are you pushing the water retention the last week before a meet then?
I will be. Yeah. I want to have my gear as tight as possible. And I always feel like when you travel for a meet, it's going to disrupt things. And I always feel like you lose a couple pounds. So you got to work to keep that bloat as you travel. Because how
much bloat will you put on in that last week?
As much as I can, usually. Yeah, like,
give me a number.
Chinese 5-10 pounds would be like a lot for me.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, but I'm working. That's 5-10 pounds on top of the fact that I'm always working to be the biggest version of myself. So 5 or 10 extra pounds just to try and hold on, knowing that I'm probably going to lose it too.
Oh yeah, you want to. I always wanted to lose it.
I want to put it on so that like the weight that I lose going into a meet will bring me back to the point where my gear fits appropriately.
Yeah.
And as everyone has done, like you have that time where you fly too close to the sun, you put on too much.
Yes.
And then you go to put on your briefs and you're like, shit.
So I was hoping I would lose enough of it by the deadlift that I'm a different physical specimen on the deadlift than the squat, like super bloated.
You want to lose it before your deadlift, not before your bench, because there's nothing worse than when you got to put your bench shirt on and you're getting ready to get pulled in and you.
Yes, but the bloated hands don't help the deadlift either. God, so you can't. I couldn't get to the bar.
That's the real problem with freaking these unlimited meets, like in the band shirts. I have not been able to pull anything because my hands get destroyed in those shirts. So the meet where I totaled 2905, I benched. I think I squatted like 1125, benched 1050, and I'm thinking like, man, we're gonna have a massive total. I pulled low 7s. I couldn't hold on to anything.
Are you icing?
I'm trying everything. Icing. I actually freeze these, and I'm walking around holding frozen water bottles. But those shirts are unforgiving on the hands.
Interesting. So that it beats your. It's
so much worse. I mean, you'd get beat up in a poly shirt, but
I know that
you're holding more weight.
I get it.
I guess that's what it is. You're holding more weight in a band shirt, so it's going to exponentially more.
So I always kind of attribute it.
I don't have big hands.
I always attribute it just to the water retention of the bloat, right? But I can see that if it's under that stress and that strain, it's going to hold too. Interesting.
Yeah.
That creates, it's a balance, right, man? It's like it's something that you were saying earlier about becoming better.
Yes.
That's part of the strategy of multiply. It's something I've always liked about it is on a good day in your head, if you put everything really together, I tell people you have to have the ability to total 150 to 200 pounds more than what you will end up totaling. Because that's just how it works.
It has to be.
Which kind of sucks, right? Because now maybe by the grace of God, it all happens on one day. Yeah. But good luck with that.
I've never done it.
Yeah,
I've been 2 for 3 a couple times.
But if you can close that gap, so say it's a 200-pound difference and you can close that, you don't have to get any stronger at all. You don't have to change anything except, God, what I used to tell the sponsors years ago, at a certain point, the healthier guy wins.
Yeah.
Right. All things created equal. The person that goes in there the less beat up is going to win.
When I watched Dave compete at the 2019 WPO, I was amazed, not always at his lifting, but at how he was off the platform running around in the back room. I'm like, this guy's in phenomenal shape. And this is more intimidating. Watching him run around.
Yeah.
And not be phased is more freaking intimidating than watching him squat 1,260 pounds or whatever it was. And I'm sitting there fucking sweating and dying. I'm like, Jesus Christ. Like, it was something to watch. And also, like, with that, you got to be smart. I think I squatted myself to a total for too many years where I just cared about the squat. Like, I want the biggest squat possible. And then you see smarter lifters. I mentioned him earlier, Seth Albersworth. Like, he looks at it different. He's like, all right, well, I might have to give up 20 pounds on my squat, but then I'll bench 50 pounds more and deadlift 10 pounds more. That's 20 and 40 is 60 take away. So that's a 40 pound more on my total. Like, he's smarter. And again, I'm trying to learn that, like, sometimes leaving a little bit in the tank will only help me as I finish out a meet. So like, maybe that last, going from 1160 to 1180, was it really worth it? Maybe not.
That's a tough one if you really love the squat.
But if you love the squat, you want to.
That's a tough one, right?
Especially you start looking at the list and you're like, well, if I go 1180, then I'm ahead of Chuck. So it's like you start thinking. Yeah. And when you're a fan of the sport, like I don't have to look up numbers anymore. Like, I look on the wall and see Chuck and I'm like, the first time I totaled 2605, I chose my deadlift to tie his best total. I'm like, because I know it in the back of my head. I'm like, ooh, this will tie me with, like, that's cool.
Yeah, but to his point, for those listening, to his point, it's the 20 pounds may not be worth. It's not the 20 pounds. It's the extra attempt.
It's the extra, like, if you smoke it, then it was the right decision.
Yeah.
And sometimes, especially in multiply, you don't know because you have to make that call. Like there have been times where my opener moves like shit and I'll come up laughing. My guys are like, you all right? I'm like, yeah, just give me like 80 more pounds. Like that was like, if you give me enough weight, like we're going to smoke the next one. But there's also times where you think that, and then you go to unrack it and you're like, I made a terrible mistake. There's just so many moving parts in multiply, which is why I love it. Like that's why I was never able to go back. Like originally multiply was supposed to be an experiment for me. Because I had these big.
Every multiply guy says that.
I had
right?
these I had these big raw ambitions, and I was accomplishing things. Like I was getting some big totals, and I was, had on a couple all-time top 20 lists, and like I was starting to make some waves. But even with that, I could just never go back because I would try, and then it just wouldn't be as fun.
Well, it's addicting too because there's so many variables.
That's what's missing from raw. Yeah, it's just
but there's a skill set. That's almost like, let's say it's football, but not football. Like you can't be a good lineman if you don't know how to fucking block. Yeah. If you don't know basic blocking drills.
And that's also what makes it to me like a sport, like raw is. And I love raw, so I'm not trying to come off as like criticizing. Lots of my friends are raw. Like I started that way, but like what makes it a sport is like the equipment, like knowing how to use a bench shirt. That's fun. Like that's a skill that you can get better at. Yeah. And I admire the guys who are less strong raw and still out like benching me. I think that's freaking cool.
It's a skill, right?
I think that's impressive.
It's a skill, and it's coming up through the sport, all I really had was gear, because my first meet in 82 was single ply, whatever. So it's always kind of bang gear. Raw didn't come on until later, but I always kind of saw it as, I don't have to physically be as strong as what you are if we're competing together. Like if I'm looking at you like, okay, there's no way I can be as strong as what Bob is. Just in the gym, there's no fucking way. He's too much stronger. But if he doesn't do his work and learn how to use the shirt, and I do, I can close that gap. So in this sport of multiply powerlifting, we'll say now, I can be the better lifter. Yeah. Assuming he doesn't do his work, I do my work. But the caveat there is now you have to figure out how to do that work and not run your dick in the ground. Yeah. Right? Because the only way you can really maximize your gear is with 90% plus weight. Exactly. So it's it's like walking a tightrope. But that's kind of like what I was getting at when I said trying, like at this point, trying to be stronger is, I don't say it's not the goal, because of course I want to be stronger, but that's not the primary focus. I want to be better. Like I want to make sure all my squats are good squats. I want to make sure I'm getting every ounce out of my gear, whether that means I need to adjust because I always wear my straps loose because I don't like them. And now I'm getting called out by my training partners. They're like, oh, you don't like them? But like, who cares? Like, is the rest of it comfortable? Tighten your fucking straps and get 10 more pounds out of it. If you can be 2% better, what's that? You start doing the math and you're like, shit, 2% on my total would be a lot. So like, you're starting to try and manufacture pounds without, I don't say without earning them, but you're trying to not get stronger and find new pounds to add to that total in different ways. Cause I feel like I've already turned over most of the try and get strong stones. Now I'm just trying to get better. Manipulate the gear better, alter my briefs to be a little bit tighter in the torso, like little tiny things. And that's what makes multiply so frustrating, but also so much fun, is there's always something to do, always something that you can tweak. Yeah. Well, we can back it all the way into raw though, because if you're talking with the beginners and intermediates, a lot of the times they won't take enough time to learn the skill of the lift for them. Their technique is not as sharp as what it needs to be. And it's a challenge sometimes to explain to them that if you fix your technique, we can put 50 more pounds on this lift over 12 months. Yeah. If you keep doing things as you're doing, putting 50 pounds on a lift in 12 months, that's a hell of an accomplishment. Yeah. Just to get 50 pounds stronger.
It's crazy.
That's crazy, crazy. So why not assume the fact that you're probably not going to get 50 pounds stronger? You might get 10 pounds stronger, but you fix your technique, optimize it, and then at the end, you have 60 pounds more. Yes. And they won't do it. Like
I've been on both sides of that. So I get it, because sometimes it's just fun to go heavy.
Why? I know, but to what expense? Exactly. Right? That's the trick.
Yeah. So if you're listening, that's what you have to learn before you have too many miles on. Because when you learn it too late, you have a torn quad, and then you're still trying to learn it.
Well, exactly. Exactly.
I always tell my lifters, like do what I say, not what I did. Because I've already had the experience of, making some wrong decisions and things like that. And that's why I hope powerlifters will keep getting stronger, because the next generation always has the benefit of learning from the mistakes of the previous.
They always have.
Yeah. And they always will.
Yeah. That's the cool thing is because a lot of people I get asked a lot of times, do you think the lifters today are stronger than lifters in the 70s? I'm like, yes, of course so. The total is kind of like the lifts show it.
Yeah. And
fake
guess what?
plates.
Like, the basketball players, baseball players, football players, they're all better as well.
Yeah. They should be, because the information's, the mistakes are being made less frequently.
There's what is it? The Isaac Newton quote. It's like, if I've seen this far, it's because I stood on the shoulders of giants. It's like everyone has the benefit of like looking at the previous generations of mistakes and learning from them. If you're smart, learning from them, so you don't have to make those same mistakes. And then whoever comes after you, same deal. Only everyone pushes it a little bit further. I think it's awesome.
Well, that's one of the benefits. Because everybody likes to talk about the negatives of social media. But one of the benefits of social media is a lot of these guys are more accessible than what people think.
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't know what they think some lifters probably are dicks. We know that. That's just comes in every demographic. There's dicks. Yes. It doesn't matter what it is. But most of them probably don't get a lot of accolades. They don't get a lot of attention. They probably don't get a lot of questions. Yeah. So if they get a question in their DMs about a lift and they love lifting, you think they're going to not answer.
100%. Matter of fact, it makes me feel good when I get those questions. It makes me feel like I'm important. Like, someone took the time to send me a message. They think I'm so good at squatting. Or, I'll watch your videos and help you out. I think it's great. That's actually one of the things, speaking of multiply and not being able to go back to raw. And again, not a knock on raw lifting. And the top level raw lifters are almost like multiply lifters in this facet. And what I mean is, like, multiply lifters like almost want to help you. It's like we're some sort of weird cult. It's like, oh, you want to try a bench shirt? Come on over. I've got 15.
Yeah.
You can't afford them, but trust me when I tell you I've got plenty. Like, join the club, guys. And like they want to help you. They'll answer all your questions. I mean, the amount of times I've bugged Danny T or like Alan or Jimmy Kolb, like, or even Hoff. Like, he's at the top of the mountain and he's never ignored one of my questions. Matter of fact, he's shot me advice just based on things he sees, even unsolicited, because he knows, like, oh, if this would help. So that's one thing that powerlifting has that other sports can't. You're not going to email LeBron James and get a response. Chances are the top tier guys, I know most of the top tier guys, I don't feel bad speaking for them and saying, like, they're going to talk to you. They're going to respond to you. And in some cases, they're going to coach you. Like, you can jump on, and a lot of them are doing that coaching. It's not something that I do. I don't feel qualified for it, but like, you can be directly coached by some of the best, and it ain't all that expensive.
Yes.
So like, you have direct access to the best of your sport whenever you want it, for the most part. Why not take advantage?
Now, I will say this to all the guys that do get questions out there, because they won't say this. For the people that do reach out to ask them questions, they'll be open to answer questions and all that, but they don't want to answer your question twice a day, every day for 6 months.
And we hate when we tell you something and you instantly like, yes, and do the opposite. Like, no one likes an asshole.
or the other one, there's probably 5 of them. So there's another. The other one is, don't ask the question, get the answer, then say, well, so-and-so told me.
Oh, there is another one, because like, if you ask a question, ask it because you want to know the answer, not because you want validation of your thoughts. Like, if you ask me a question, don't be looking for me to say what you already think. Be open to the fact that it might be something different. Anthony Oliveira said something about that one time on his podcast. He's like, that's why I like coaching female athletes. He's like, because they ask a question looking for the answer, and my male athletes ask a question looking for me to agree with them.
I think that's the only one that really matters. I think that summarizes all the other ones all into one.
Like, why are you asking it? If you're asking it because you want to be better, be open to the fact that you might not like what you have to hear, but that might be why you need to hear it. That one right there speaks for all the other ones. So I'm going to change my message moving forward to just that, because that's perfect. Today's episode is brought to you by First Detachment. Are you looking for a supplement brand that truly understands hardworking athletes? Look no further than First Detachment. I have known Justin Harris for pretty close to 2 decades. And if there's anybody that I trust with nutritional and supplement needs, it's Justin Harris. While I love all of their products, I'd suggest that you check out the Field Rations and WTH first. Go to www.firstdetachment.com
and use the code TableTalk10 to save 10% off each order. The link is in the description. You guys are selecting Merkh for your telehealth platform needs. They have a couple different ways that they go about doing this. The first is through a self-selected experience. So there's a Table Talk panel, which is the full panel. That would be the panel that I personally get twice a year. That's checking everything. You name it, it's all there. The other panel is a checkup panel with a guided optimization. You're connected with a patient care coordinator, and the patient care coordinator will meet with you to determine what your needs are, thing to be able to help optimize your health or mitigate without judgment. So the discount code again is Table Talk Merkh Health for all your hormone optimization and performance needs. This is Dave Tate from elitefts. Last year, we partnered with Ken Kanakin to co-host the Swiss Symposium. It's built on hypertrophy and sport medicine for strength athletes and practitioners to come together in one place, which will be the Columbus Hilton at Easton. You are going to learn how to level up your training based upon the success and failures of others. You have to stay on top of your game if you want to be able to make the success and move forward at the pace that you want. Just to name a few of the presenters that will be presenting, we're going to have Matt Winning, Brian Carroll, Eric Serrano, Jim Wendler. That's just a few. These experts will be presenting on low back injury and prevention, exercise selection, as well as a business, steroid recovery, and restoration panel. If you want to network with one of the experts that we have presenting, we're going to have people there to be able to help you do that. To register for the Swiss Symposium, go to the elitefts.com website, look for the banner on the homepage, click that, we'll see you there. I want to call out the limited edition apparel. The link is in the description. As I spoken about before, the limited edition apparel is apparel that I basically come up with. So some of the designs suck, some of them not so much. It's a weird thing. The ones that I think are going to do really well usually don't. The ones that I think aren't going to do really well do really well. Either way, they're all limited runs, so it changes, every single month. But all limited edition items are tri-blend material with, the cut that everybody wants now that's a little bit tighter on their arms so they can show off how big their fucking arms are. The limited edition items directly support the podcast. So head over, pick up your shirt today. Could be a hoodie. Could be shorts. We got these ball hugger shorts right now, which I would never wear, but I was told they were super popular. But you know what? They were wrong because they're still sitting there and I probably should discount them right now. Anyhow, if you want to see the discount on the ball hugger shorts, head over to the limited edition apparel, link in the description box. All right, what I want to go into now is training. All right, because we've danced around the whole training thing. So when you first started getting into powerlifting with the group that you got associated with, you said it was kind of conjugate, kind of not conjugate.
Yeah, those guys were closer to a traditional conjugate the way they did things. But when I joined, I was basically there for their max effort days. Okay. So I was half conjugate. I was the fun half. So
as you've progressed over a period of time, everybody kind of locks into their own way of doing things. Right. So you've locked into your own style of periodization or whatever it is. What does that look like?
So basically, most of the things I stole from West Side conjugate max effort stuff. I'd say my max effort days are pretty traditional, right? I rotate bars, I rotate bands and tension and chains and stuff like that, sometimes both. So they're pretty normal. In terms of my secondary days, I haven't always loved dynamic work. I've done it, I've played with it. Sometimes I have success, sometimes I don't. So my own twist on that has been sort of a couple different things. Sometimes I'd squat heavy twice a week, which people think was crazy, but I was getting results. So I'd squat heavy on Wednesday and again on Saturday. Never really benched heavy twice a week, but I benched for more volume and I have a heavy raw day and a heavy equipped day. The main criticism of my training has always been you're going too heavy too often.
So there's a raw day and a gear day.
Yes.
So with the raw day, it's going to be lighter just because it's raw.
Lighter because you're raw. And then with my squats, there was never a raw day anymore because I love squatting my briefs. But it would be my traditional max effort day, and my second day would generally be a higher AR day, and I'd work up to something top end heavy, and I would do singles at that weight. So for instance, I might do 2 strong bands and 700 pounds for 5 singles. And I'd like that to sort of the same premise of I guess the dynamic effort is all about practicing. You get lots of reps. Mm-hmm. Well, I like to do my reps with a little bit more heavier weight.
So a technique day and a heavy day.
You could call it that. Like that's actually sometimes how it was described to me by other people smarter than I was. So like one day you're pushing it, the other day you're honing it. You're honing your skill, like more technique based.
Now on the day that you're pushing it, say your max effort day.
Yeah.
How frequent or what is the frequency of how you rotate the movements in and out?
So we've played with a couple ways. At one point I was rotating it like every week.
Yeah.
But it became hard to sort of monitor your progress. And then we would do like a 2 or 3 week wave. And I've done that as well. I, believe it or not, like rotating it every week. I felt like I was making great progress doing that. Because I think I do better pushing myself when I don't have something to compare it to. Some people need that. If I did this week, I can do more next week. I didn't love that, but I had great success benching that way. So when I bench, my max effort movement was usually like at like a 3-week wave. That's around the time I was like learning from some of the old Metal Militia stuff. And I did like a lot of reps. So like my max effort day was very rarely singles. And I was in a shirt way more than most people. So like typically in a typical month, like 3 out of the 4 weeks, sometimes even 4 out of the 4 weeks, I was in my bench shirt. And people thought that was crazy. And I chewed through a lot of STPs that way. But I would rotate. I'd have shirts for training shirts, things that Ginny would keep alive for me. But I was a big fan of volume in a bench shirt. I've never had a problem touching. I've never felt uncomfortable under like heavy weight. And I loved like triples were like a thing. I would do triples 1 week, taking small jumps. And then the second week, I would take triples using bigger jumps to see if I could push a little bit further. And then in that third week, depending on where I was and like training for a meet cycle, I might take like a heavier single, but I almost never used boards and I did lots of reps. Moving on from that, I've experimented with some other things, but I think when I was benching my best is when I was doing the most volume in a shirt.
So the bench is operating in a 3-week wave on that heavy day.
Yes.
So we'll stay with the bench. Yeah, we'll stay with the bench, then come back to the squat. So then on the light day, I assume that's raw.
Yeah, I would
take
like a raw heavy day or like a slingshot, like something. And that was more just because, and sometimes, like I said, if I felt good, I would just repeat the cycle before I'd take that down week. And sometimes I'd feel good and we'd go right back into triples. And
what do you mean repeat the cycle on the
second? I would just go back to triples again.
On the second day?
So it was like a 4-week wave.
Yeah.
And then like if I felt good after the 3 weeks, I would just restart and I'd go do triples with small jumps again and try and keep pushing it forward. But never with boards. Like I was never.
Yeah. Now are we talking the main day or the secondary
main day?
Okay. So the secondary day with that, because I can see that's rotating in 3-week, 4-week waves, whatever it's going to be. With that on the secondary day when you're using a slingshot or whatever it's going to be.
Yeah. Secondary day was normally just raw, and I didn't really have much of a plan there. I'd do like I just have Priplin's chart printed out and sitting behind my bench, and I would kind of just a la carte pick and choose based on how I felt.
So pick and choose the percentage?
Pick and choose the percentage and then just follow along with it.
Okay. So.
But raw.
Yeah. Let me throw it back to you to see if this assumption is correct. So the heavy bench day makes sense. We can roll that all the way into using shirts and all the other kind of stuff. That makes sense. On the secondary day, you come in based upon how you feel. Like, so if you're still feeling a little trashed from the other day or from the squat.
Yeah, so I just pick something like higher reps, so lower percentage.
So you're going to pick like the 70% or the 80%. Yep. Then you're going to see the total number of reps you need to do. And then you're going to pick the exercise based upon what works best for those reps.
Yes.
Right? Yep. So like a full range thing's going to work best for the higher reps.
Yes.
Right?
Pretty much. Yeah. If it would be like straight weight or something like that. And if it was like lower, I love chains in the bench.
Yes.
So something like that for like my lower rep, heavier weight stuff.
See, from an I'm a big proponent of auto regulation, right? From the auto regulation standpoint, this makes 1000% complete fucking sense, right? Because it falls within. Yeah,
and I have to trust myself to know, like, there are days where, like, I don't want to stay light, but my body's telling me and I have to listen to it. So I always say, like, my training looks stupid unless you're in my head with me. Like, because I'd never really push it if I didn't. Like, there were definitely days where I'd be like, oh, it's not there today, and I'd stop. But people just don't see that. They just see me going heavy all day.
But on the bench, your main driver's that other day.
Yeah.
So you have to be ready for that other day. Yes. This is to complement the other day, right?
Yes.
So you're not going to do anything that's going to work against that.
Right.
But in your brain, you're not going to do zero either.
No.
So it has to be something that's going to complement it in the best way, right? If that main day is...
And I find that secondary day, a lot of the movements that I found myself gravitating towards, especially in the earlier days, were like more tricep lockout dominated movements and things like that, because I needed like top end strength, which makes sense if you consider my raw background. I was lacking at the lockout. I was lacking there. Because even when I first put a shirt on, I used to laugh because my training partners, I could beat them on a touch and press. We'd go to a 3-board and I'd get my ass kicked. And there's something wrong there. It's just that all my power from all the raw days was generated down here, and I just didn't have the lockout strength. So for a while, that secondary day, a lot of it was like higher board work. And I'm still using the chart, but it was exercises that strengthened my weakness.
When you get out of that main movement and now you're looking at the accessory movements for that day, how are those implemented? Is it just based upon feel, or is there some kind of mental dancing that you're doing with that for each one of those days?
I've played with both. I mean, sometimes I just come in there with not so much of a plan, more of a direction. I know I'm going to hammer the triceps and things like that. I know generally what I love to do. One of the best things was a couple of my lifters started having Phelps train them, and she has so many different movements that just getting exposed to them and just learning new things was great for me to now have more tools in my toolbox, I guess. So like I've had a couple years now where I've gotten to see that, and I'm a little bit more purposeful with my selection. I have more things to throw in there and rotate through. But yeah, I didn't always have like a great plan. I know that I'm going to do, my one main bench movement, and I'm going to pick 2 or 3 sort of heavier accessories. And I love, like I said, I love my volume. There's always going to be like band push downs or push downs with a band and all sorts of push-ups and things like that, just because I love being down there and I like to spend my time in the gym. But we get plenty of volume after my 2 or 3 working sets or working movements.
So the way I break a training day down is you have the main movement, and then you have what I will call a supplemental exercise, which is the one that's trained with more intent and purpose. And then the accessories, which is the other crap that you're talking about. With your supplemental grouping, it's more than one movement. Is that correct?
Yes. I usually have 2.
So 2.
Yeah.
And then with that are there through the 3 to 5 range, or are you going a little bit higher than that?
I'd say I'm like more like 5 to 8 with the supplementary stuff. But 3 to 5 is not uncommon. But like I'd say most of the time I'm living in the 5 to 8, maybe even like 7 to 10 range with those.
Would the 3 to 5 be more common as the first exercise is full range?
The 3 to 5 would be more common, if I was a lighter with that first one. If I was like in the 70%, say, then I'd probably push it a little harder on the supplementary exercises. Just based on feel, because I'd have a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I see where you're going. I'm just trying to figure out how to explain it to people who are listening.
I know. That's always been like my biggest weakness is like people will ask me things and I'm like, I do what I feel like is right. And it seems to work for me and it seemed to work for my guys. Not all of them, though. Some of the guys have had to deviate from that because they've had to learn what doesn't work for them, which is also...
well, there's only so much you're going to be able to recover from, right? So
I've been blessed with good recovery. I've been told, like, I don't know. There's no reason. I don't do anything special to recover other than I've trained hard most of my life and I am very active and I walk a bunch and things like that. But I have no answer for the question as to how I recover so fast. It's just I generally am good.
Well, higher volume, that plays into that too, where I think the missing component that people miss if they're trying to understand what you're doing is you're making the decision on what comes next after what you just did.
Yeah.
Right. So if that first exercise, there's more gas in the tank, then it will be heavier.
I'm going to push a little harder. I'll probably pick a 3 to 5 rep range and I'm going to pick something a little bit more challenging.
Yeah. Now on the flip side, if you go to that heavier day, with the shirt work and all that, there may not be anything left after that. And that's it. Yeah, maybe it jumps straight.
My max effort days sometimes wouldn't even have you'll call it a supplementary. My true max effort days might just go from main movement to accessories.
Yes.
Especially that first day of triples because I would take small jumps. So I'd put my shirt on at 5.5 plates, 5.5, 6.5, or 5.5, 6, 6.5, 7, 7.5, 8. That's a lot of volume, a lot of reps in a shirt. By the time I'm done, I'm cooked. And then I always did one back down touch set with something just because I would like to touch and press a single every workout. That was more just a thing that I did.
Yeah.
So, because I was always nervous about touching in a meet. So that was just something that I always worked in. So my shirt work, you might have 18, 24 reps in a shirt as close to full range as I can get them. So I was generally cooked.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then it's right to the tricep push.
Right to the tricep push downs and 2 or 3 of those to get out of there.
All right. Now on the squat day, there's probably, there could be on the max effort day, which is your heavy day.
Yes.
there's how long, as you said, those cycles used to be 1 week, now it's 3 weeks, but that's your heavy day too. So as you come into a meet, at what point does that become more specific to just the barbell?
I really didn't worry about getting specific for a meet until like 3 or 4 weeks out. And then I would worry about like dialing things in. So like usually 4 weeks out. And then eventually as I got further on 3 weeks out, I would take like an opener and a second. That was like the only thing I needed straight weight. So I don't ever just use just the barbell. I was always chains or bands or something and just pushing heavy weight. I didn't really have much of a plan until like 4 weeks out.
Well, if you get to the 8 to 4 weeks out, is it a barbell or is it a safety squat bar?
Still rotating.
So
I'm
still rotating
until about at 4 weeks out. It would be like a straight bar, or sometimes if I'm feeling like beat up in the shoulders, I might throw on like a buffalo bar or something like that. But generally, 4 weeks until the meet is when I go to just a straight bar.
All right, and then all those other rotations, are they based upon how do you think through those rotations? I believe you're thinking from the day forward. You're not looking at like this year, and backing a year back.
I'm like making decisions week by week.
Yes. All right. Yeah. So with that, what determines if the exercise is going to change or not going to change?
For the most part, I'd like to see them changing every week. Like I said, through most of the time, not much determined it. I would say that as I got closer to a meet, I started dialing back on some of the crazy AR and wanted more, call it real weight, call it whatever you want to. But farther out would be a lot more accommodating resistance and a lot more frequency of bars like the giant cambered bar and things like that. As we got closer, and safety squat bar, as we got closer to meets, I generally deviated from bars like the spider bar or the safety squat bar, and I'd pick Duffalo bar, occasionally the straight bar, cambered bar, things that allowed me to replicate like my actual competition squat a little bit more, and then start like dialing back on some of the AR as I got closer to a meet.
Do you find that some of the bars need more than 1 week because you need a week just to get reacclimated to the bar?
Not so much at this point, but like early on, yeah, especially with like the safety squat bar is my nemesis. So if I'm going to do well on that, that would have to be something that I'd need a couple weeks to really prepare myself for. Which makes sense, actually, knowing that's my nemesis now. It's something that I probably should have used more because my quads, like I said, they were less dominant, and I think that's part of it, is that bar exposes you and pulls me a little bit forward, and I should have probably been on that bar more. I ran from it a little bit. My training partners will tell you that I did. I just ran from it.
Well, yeah, everybody does to a certain degree. Like, we all tell people to do the shit that you don't like, but you only do the stuff that you kind of don't like. So what does the supplemental movements look like for the squat pull?
So on that main squat day, we've done everything from days where we would just come and squat. Mm-hmm. And then go home. Because like I said, at one point I was running a crew of like 15 guys.
Well, squat's rough as fuck too.
I had some real success when I had my heavy squat day, and when I would get done, I would do like 10 singles on the deadlift with some fairly strong band tension. Nothing crazy on the weight. So you might have like 315 to 405, but with like strongs and lights or strongs and an average, and I would just practice my form, very similar to what I would do with my squats on Wednesday. And then on Wednesday, which was my like secondary squat day, if you want to call it that, that's when I would do my heavier pulls. So I kind of just flipped them. I was actually deadlifting twice a week, but the deadlifts that I did after I squatted on Saturday was always very light and just purposeful. A lot of times I'd pull off like 2 mats and just practice my setup just to get some reps in.
Is the deadlift most of the weeks on the heavy day?
Yeah, I did most of the heavy day. I would just get my squats done. I would go in, you called it my technique day. I would do my technique day with squats, and then I would hammer the deadlifts. That was like it's almost like I had a max effort deadlift day on Wednesdays. And I got tons of crap about how heavy I deadlifted. But my best deadlifts came when I was deadlifting the most often and the heaviest.
How much variation with those?
So not much, other than I varied the band tension. It was weird. My best deadlifts, and I was never a great deadlifter. That was always the lift that I struggled the most with. My best deadlifts came when I was really messing with like crazy band tension. It was Bruce Mason had this idea that he wanted to test out on me. When he thought he was done competing, he basically reached out and he's like, I need to fix your deadlift, but I need to work with you. And he basically said, you're crazy, so you like to go heavy, and that's what's killing you. He's like, but I think I've got the solution. He started using crazy band tension so it wouldn't beat up my lower back, but I was still getting sort of the I was getting to feel heavy weight. Like it was still challenging to me. It was fun because I like going heavy. I was still getting the feeling of heavy weight in my hands, and I'm pulling against bands all the time. Then he tells me just go enter this meet. So enter a meet deadlift only, and he tells me to open with, I think it was like 760, which I had never pulled 760, and that was my opener. And I hadn't pulled over 700 in the gym. I thought the guy was nuts, but the only way to prove that he was wrong was to listen to him, because I did let him coach me. A few times I let someone tell me what to do. And so in my attempt to prove him wrong, he proved himself right, and I pulled 800 pounds. So I'm like, oh, turns out that's another good thing. Sometimes it doesn't have to make sense to me.
So when you say crazy band tension, what are you talking about?
I mean, I think at one point I had strong average. It was like nutty shit.
Like 600 at the top?
Yeah, like insane amounts of band tension, to the point where like it was comical almost. Like everything was either fast or nothing, because like you'd get caught up in those bands.
So what was the bar weight? Like 225?
315, 365, like stuff like that. Like I said, I in no way thought I was prepared to pull, but he basically said, trust that you know what to do, and it'll be there. And it was.
Okay. So after those, what are the accessories for the lower body days then?
So it would be simple stuff like hamstring curls. A lot of times, hypers, hamstring curls on the hypers, leg extensions with the monkey foot thing. I was really never big into, and it's a shame because I feel like that would have made a difference. I was really never big into like lower body accessories. And I think the big thing was I just didn't have the gym for it. You know, I didn't have an extension. I didn't have curls. So it was like, we got the monolift, we've got the platform, I've got a belt squat. You know, I've had to get more creative. And now I joke, but I'm going to Planet Fitness, and now I'm hitting leg accessories like never before because I have access to it. I walk around, extensions, curls, hack squats, all those stupid machines, and I'm feeling good about it. So it makes me wonder, like, I didn't take my lower body accessories as serious as I probably should have coming up. It was just, I mean, squats kick your ass, deadlifts kick your ass. It was real easy to walk back up those stairs and eat dinner. Not like I would, because on bench day, you know, you get through your benching a little bit quicker. I've got a little bit more time. I'm spending more time hammering shoulders, hammering back, hammering triceps. I didn't really do that. So like my squat and deadlifts were just, I'd squatted, I pulled, and I did different variations of squats and pulls. For the most part, if I'm being honest, I didn't do the same amount of work accessory wise on my legs.
So what do these other days look like? Because if you're training 6 days a week, that makes up 4.
Yeah. Oh, I have like a full on back day. Sunday I do shoulders at my coach's house, the guy I came up with. That's kind of like my easiest day. I bring him breakfast, and I do like a shoulder day, and it's fairly light, lots of volume. My back day, I usually do one heavy back day and one light back day where I might throw some biceps in. Generally, it's just because I like to be in the gym. So sometimes it's just like a full body workout day. Throw some abs in. I don't always have a plan. I have different ones that I've written down in the past that I might want to knock out and do.
So what are the sets and reps here? I can guess, but...
Oh, it depends on the day. Like I said, sometimes I might have more of a plan. I might, like a heavy back day, I might do 8s and just keep working up and see how heavy I could go. But there's also days where I'll just pick a number and see, like, how do I get to 1,500 reps, knowing that it's a back day, and I'll start doing sets of 25 on like some variation of a row, and I might do pull downs, and I might do like chest supported rows or whatever it is, and I just keep the tally and see how fast I can get to 1,500 reps. And so is that what you're looking for on those days, the X number of reps, or are you looking at the movements? I'm just trying to condition myself. I take no breaks. I keep bouncing up. So everything's a superset. So if I'm doing like a heavy lat pull down, I might do like a light mid-range row in between, and then I might do like a heavy light and like a light wide, and I'm just going through counting the reps, chalking off every 100 and seeing what I can get out of there, ending it with a couple 100 reps of bicep curls or something like that, just to make sure I get my number. And if you were to ask me why I do it, I don't really have much of a reason, other than sometimes it's fun to go down in the gym alone. And well, I'm just trying to figure out why it's helping you, right? Yeah. Because everybody can tell you why it won't help you. Yeah. But the fact is it does, right? So now if it's before, that day is going to fall before your bench day, right? Like the day before that. So I did have to, one thing that my training partner noticed is originally I was training my shoulder day that is now on Sunday was on a Monday. And he pointed out the fact that was negatively impacting my bench day. So he moved that to Sunday. So now Monday is kind of like the light bicep day. It's probably my lightest day because I have to be ready for a Tuesday. Well, Tuesday is a bench. Tuesday is my heavy bench day. Yes. And he noticed that he saw the fatigue in like my lockout before that I did, and he made me switch that, and it was big. Like that made a big difference. So is Sunday the day off? Sunday is like my shoulder day now. Sunday and Monday are both fairly light though.
Okay, so
Saturday kills me.
Yes.
Sunday and Monday are fairly light. Sunday's light shoulders, Monday's light back and buys and full body or anything that I might have missed that I'm collecting and finishing. Tuesday's my big bench day. Wednesday's the secondary leg day.
So what's Thursday?
Thursday is kind of a day like a Sunday and a Monday, except I might go a little bit heavier on the back on the Thursday.
All right. I would kind of, if I was to define this to give you some better terms, I would say that those first 2 days of the week that you're using are more recovery-based training. And then that Thursday is more like a feeder-based training session, to try to, it's not so much to recover from the Wednesday, even though it is a little bit, it's to help prepare, for that next day. Or Saturday is to help prepare you for Saturday, as far as feeding into that for activation and shit like that. So Friday is, if it's Friday off, if Saturday is the heavy squat day.
So there's no days off. Friday is when I do my secondary bench day.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay. Yeah. Now, does that make it harder for you to get under a bar?
No, not really. I've been shoulder dexterity and stuff like that's always been fine. I mean, if you watch me squat, I'm usually pretty close actually. Like I don't feel comfortable squatting with my hands out wide. I'm tucked and fairly mobile. For a little while when I had the shoulder issues, I was struggling getting under a bar, and I just relied heavily on the cambered bar.
Now with your steps, on your Instagram, you track your steps. So my question is, were you tracking your steps before the quad tear?
Yes.
So you were averaging the 11,000 or 10,000. What was the average before?
When I started that in the very beginning of COVID, like 2019, late 2019, it started accidentally because I was so fucking bored. I'm like, I'm going on walks because I'm teaching from home. Yeah. I'm always home. I started going on walks, and then I actually liked it for the mental aspect of it. Like I'd go on a nighttime walk, just put my AirPods in, listen to podcasts, and just walk around the neighborhood. But then I started to notice that I was getting a benefit of my back feeling good. And I'm like, oh, I guess being more mobile, my back felt so much better. Like everyone, every big squatter and deadlifter has lower back pain. And that was just something that I thought I had to live with. Well, the more I walked, the less back pain I had. And it was so simple. I'm like, I'm just going to keep this up. And then I started pushing it a little bit more. And then as I recovered from this, I upped it to now I'm doing 20,000 steps a day. A lot of times I put the weight vest on, and now it's almost become like GPP when I put a weight vest on and I'm walking, with 60 pounds strapped to myself, and I feel like I'm in pretty good shape.
Where do you think the point of diminishing returns is going to be when you start training to peak for me?
So I think I'm already there. If I don't think I could walk 20,000 steps and be training like I was training.
20,000 is a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Man.
I think I could 10, 12, maybe even 13, 15, I think, if you varied your days, I think you could pull that off. But 20,000, I couldn't do this. There wouldn't be enough time to get all the things that I need to do in. But this also fills the void. If I can't train as hard as I've been training and as long and as much as I've been training, this is just something else to keep me focused.
Now, when you're teaching and you're in summer now, right?
Yeah.
So how many steps do you get just while you're at work?
I generally try and leave work with 10,000 or more.
So you're getting that.
But I don't sit down. You imagine what it's like teaching middle school. You're running around from kid to kid.
No, I get it.
And then the last thing I want to do, this is going to sound bad if my colleagues listen to it, but the last thing I want to do when I'm not teaching is sit around the break room with a lot of the other teachers. So I'll just grab my lunch and I just go start walking laps around the building and hang out, play on my phone, listen to podcasts, do whatever, just to give me some sort of mental break. Because if you go into the lunchroom, everyone's bitching about teaching and bitching about everything, and I just don't need that negativity.
Yeah.
So I just kind of hang out by myself and go on some walks, and I usually knock out a mile then.
Well, the reason I put this out there is, steps have been a reoccurring thing on pretty much every podcast that I've done, because your cardio is your ability to recover from training. Yes. The people that don't understand that at this point are just they're idiots in my mind, right? It's not only fuck science-based. I mean, everybody says it, right? Every big lifter has said the same damn thing. All of them. That if it gets to the days of being out of shape and purple, it still kind of happens before meet, but you can't process the nutrients, you can't recover. Where I try to tell people you can get more steps in during their normal day at work than you think. And if you're waiting until 5 o'clock or when your work's over, and then you're going to try to pull in 8,000 steps, you're going to have a problem.
And not only are you right, but I would argue that is better, because that's how I do it. So if you look at the 20,000 steps, if I were to pull it out right now, I guarantee you outside of maybe one, maybe two instances a day, you're not going to see any, it logs it by hour. You're not going to see any hours with more than like 2,000, 3,000 steps, because I'm purposeful. I always do it after I eat because I feel like it helps with digestion. I always do it after I lift because I feel like it helps me loosen back up. So I'm walking 20,000 steps, but it's not because I'm going on long walks. It's because I'm going on constant walks.
So I think that's where people have this misconception.
And I think that's where people are missing it. You're right, because it's like, well, I don't have time to go walk for an hour and a half. It's like, well, you got time to walk for 15 minutes after you ate that hoagie.
Well, exactly. I mean, you got time to walk.
Just get up and walk around. Or sometimes it's just like,
park further from the store.
Like it is. Like if you literally park at the back of the parking lot and you think about it, if it's 700 steps there and 700 steps back, well, that's 1,400 steps plus walking around the store. You got a fucking half a mile. It ain't that hard.
Yeah. Now here's a different question. It's because I have a set number that I try to hit. Do you OCD if it gets to be like 9 o'clock at night and say you're 1,000 steps away from it?
Yeah.
Or you just say fuck it?
No, I OCD it.
Okay, so I'm not the only one.
No.
Like I've walked in circles before.
So obviously, like last night I did in my hotel room. Like I'm at the hotel, I look and I'm like, I can tell you it was like 18,900. I'm like, fuck, we're gonna walk around this hotel for the next 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But actually knowing that I was getting up and driving my ass to Ohio, I got up yesterday before I went into preschool and I walked a couple times around the block. I'm like, I need a head start if I'm spending 8-9 hours in a car. Like I need to be walking out of work with like 12,000, 15,000 steps minimum, knowing I've got this car ride. But that's one of those things where it's not just the physical benefits, because again, blood pressure is down, things like that, but it's also like a mental benefit of like you're holding yourself accountable of just one more thing. Like it's one more. Anthony posts his he doesn't do steps, he does like his lunges. Okay. Same type of thing. I actually stole it from him. I saw him doing that. That's where I got the idea to do it daily. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, that's a cool thing. But it's not just about the physical benefit. It's like a mental challenge to yourself. Like when I was driving to Texas because my flight got fucking canceled and I had to drive 26 hours in order to make Meeker's meet, I stopped at rest stops. That's when I was only doing 10,000 a day, thankfully. I stopped at rest stops, told Magnavita, fill up the car and pick me up down the road. He's like, what? I'm like, fill up the car. I'm going to walk that way. However long it takes. Catch me on the side of the road. He's like, you're fucking nuts.
That's another good point, though. I mean,
I am fucking nuts.
If you're on a long road trip, you got to pull into P somewhere anyhow.
Figure it out,
You know, walk, and
it's better for your road trip. You'll feel better.
Way better.
So much.
Because it won't be all jammed up from sitting for 12 hours. So you add an extra 45 minutes. It's not even going to add 45 minutes. You add an extra half hour.
Exactly.
And you just, it's kind of brainless where... Yeah. I have to also admit that if I'm close and say it's at night, my OCD, if you want to call it that, I will fucking count them.
I do
steps.
Too. Yeah, same here.
So it's like I know my fucking watch is not going to get them.
Do you ever do this though? I'll as I get close, I'll count walking one direction, get to a number, and be like, cool. If I turn around and go back where I started, I don't have to count twice. Yeah. So I'll count 500 and be like, cool. If I turn around and go back, I need to count for the next 500.
Well, I don't know why I do it because all it's going to do is make me mad. Yeah. That
the phone doesn't
it didn't track it right.
Me off too. Yeah.
It's like motherfucker. Or sometimes, I'll be charging it. Then I'll forget, and like 3 or 4 hours go by. I'm like,
yeah, you lost those steps. Yeah,
yeah. I'm like, do they really count?
I'm so crazy that I'll be at Universal because we go there. My wife and I we love Universal in Florida, and we're always in Florida. Like some of the rides you have to give up your cell phone for. I'm like, man, fuck. This is going to fuck up my steps. Like I'm walking up all these stairs. I'm walking around all this line. That cost me 300 steps I could have had. Yeah. I don't know. No reason other than I'm nuts.
Well, I saw in there that you'll go there like 10 times a year.
Yeah, easily.
So what about Universal? I mean, there's other places too. So why Universal versus, say, not Disney, but what's a...
Busch Gardens.
Busch Gardens. I mean, Busch Gardens is different, but why Universal?
The easiest way to explain it is, number one, my wife loves it. So that's a win. She's happy, I'm happy, we're all happy. But also, I live right by the Atlantic City International Airport. I'm talking maybe 4 or 5 minutes. And I can fly to Florida I flew there the other day for the day. My wife, my youngest son, and we flew. It was $64 round trip for all three of us.
All three of you?
So that means 21 and change each. So think about that. So I wake up, I'm on a plane. Now it's 4 minutes away, mind you. So I can be at the airport in 10 minutes. I get there as we board. So I wake up at 5. I'm there by 5:15. I'm on a plane by 5:40. I'm in Orlando by 7:50. grab a 20-minute Uber for $20. I'm in Universal, hang out at Universal all day, go back to the airport at 9, grab some food, get on a plane. I'm home by midnight.
Oh, so this is all same day?
Sometimes
Okay,
I go for
all
a few days, but that's it's so easy and so cheap. And people are like, "Oh, you're crazy." I'm like, "Well, you would drive 3 hours to train and back."
Yeah.
Shit, sometimes I'll go because I have so many friends in Florida with Perfect Storm and Danny and Dan Bell's gym where, you know, that gym's awesome, CTX in Orlando. I'll make like a 3-day weekend out of it and I won't even miss training.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
So it's
now.
awesome.
That changes it.
But the reason I keep going to Universal is because we put the money into a season pass. So like I can go down there for a weekend and spend maybe, outside of the fact that I already bought the pass.
Yeah.
Like it might cost me $300-400. So for the cost of like a nice dinner out, I can do a weekend in Florida, which sometimes is liberating after living in New Jersey.
No, I get that. Now
nice
this makes sense. Now I have a different perspective.
So it's not even just, it's not like I love Harry Potter that much, which I mean, I like it.
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
It's more about like I can take a weekend away for the cost of a night out to dinner. And that's just, you know, that's more fun to me. And like I said, my wife loves it, so got to keep her happy.
How many steps do you get while you're there?
Usually about 30.
30,000.
30,000.
That's about right.
Universal day.
That's about right.
Yeah. You have to.
Mm-hmm. So if you're going there, say, and you're going to train.
Yep.
How do you plan that?
If I'm training at CTX, they train right in the morning. By the time I get there, it's, you know, I'll usually only stay for like, if I'm training there, they're, let's say they're squatting. I'll probably squat with them, maybe hit a deadlift or two if Danny or Alan want to, and then get out of there. So I won't stay for their full, like, they're like I am, like 3.5 hours of a training session. I might be there for 2. Because it's unfair. My family's waiting on me generally. Like, I've got the car. They're, like, ready to go. But we'll go early. So by the time they have breakfast, get themselves up, and get ready, I'm ready to go back. And we'll still get those steps in because you can't not when you're walking around the theme park. So it's...
Yeah, so the steps are not before the training.
The steps are not before, no.
Okay, that makes sense. Where is your daughter still competing now?
So my daughter's not competing now, but she's still in the gym every day. She's just, you know, she's 19. She did say she wants to do a deadlift meet, which I think would be cool because she's going to be 19 in August. I think she routinely pulls like 350, and I don't know what she weighs because I'm not brave enough to ask my teenage daughter what she weighs. But if I had to guess, she's no more than 140. So like that's a pretty damn nice pull for a 18, 19-year-old girl. She's strong. But she's been lifting. She's got great form. She's been lifting since she was 5. So it's, like I said, she even did one multiply meet.
Is it 4 kids that you have?
I have 3. I got 3 twins who are going to be 19, then my little guy's 11.
Okay, so the 11.
Yeah.
How do you balance that with work, training? I mean, it helps because your gym's in your house.
It does,
right?
And my gym's in the house because I have them. Like I got to give my wife a lot of the credit, but she was right. Originally, when I first started the gym, it was cool because the gym's the whole basement now, but it used to be, I had a separate room, which is now we call it the bench room, but that was like the play/homework room. And part of the balance was like daddy trains after work, but you guys still have homework and things to do, and that comes first. So that I could still actively help with their homework. So my wife didn't get home from work as early as I did because she was a social worker. I was a teacher. They would sit down, do their homework, and there was this like little table, like this little cut-in window, but it was cut in high enough that like it was at like chest level. So they would sit in a stool, do their work, and I was training, and they would flip it around. I'd fix those, and then they would get done their work. They'd be in the playroom, so we'd be together. So I felt like I was multitasking, like I wasn't missing time with my family. It was like a nice way to have both. And what ended up being really cool is it wasn't intentional. Like they caught the bug. Like everyone in my family lifts. Like even my 11-year-old. My son was the last to catch on. You know, the 19-year-old. He really didn't start. Like he'd putz around, but probably about 2 years ago, like he started asking, like, "Can I just use the gym?" And then he would go down there by himself. And then just this last year, he's like, "Can I start coming to the gym with you?" And I was like, "Oh, thank God." Because you never want to push him. Like, I never want to say, like, "I want you to lift with me," because that's the last thing you want to tell a teenager. But yeah, so he comes to the gym with me frequently. He comes every Sunday when I go to Coach's house. And so he's training now too.
How long have you been married?
I have been married, 13 years this year.
Okay. And because that becomes a whole management thing too, especially with the trainings and it's in your basement.
Yeah.
Right?
And I mean, like I said, I feel like I've found a good balance. And it's hard. Like, obviously some things got to go, but I just make sure the things that get cut aren't family things. So the things I miss out on, like I have never had cable. There you go. I don't have it. I've got Hulu and Netflix, I guess, and I don't really have much time for that stuff. But the things that I cut are not things that are really important. They're not making me better, and I'm not missing anything in life because I'm not caught up with the latest episode of whatever people are watching. Family comes first, lifting comes second. Work probably comes third.
Yeah.
Work comes third, but like my students are almost like family, if that makes sense. So like I take care of a lot of students as if they were family, and that almost goes more into the family element of things. Like the day-to-day operations and teaching would be after lifting, if I'm being honest. So it's family, then lifting, then the teaching, outside of the fact that a lot of the stuff that I do with teaching becomes more family oriented almost.
Well, you're in a unique position because you're still competing. And you have these things that with your family and all this that you're known for this balance. So yeah. I'm sure you've had many conversations at breakfast with people who that are unbalanced,
right? Trying
to ask you advice on what to do.
Well, so I've been told by lots of people, I've been told how stupid my training is plenty of time by people with totals nowhere near as good as mine.
Yeah.
But more importantly, I get told like, well, what if you didn't have the balance? What if you went all into this? Like, do you think you could insert question there? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, do you want to find out? I'm like, no, that doesn't appeal to me at all.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah,
I can kind of see that.
I enjoy the balance. Like, I don't know.
What's the advice that you would give to the people that are seeking it, though? I mean, you kind of touched on it a little bit. Get rid of this shit.
I've definitely had conversations. So my buddy Tristan, he's going to definitely be listening to this. Tristan Breen, he's always chirping, always in my ear. He's like a adopted son to me out there in Utah. But like one of the first conversations.
He's a teacher too, isn't he?
Yes, he is. Yes. So we have like multiple connections.
Yeah.
One of the first like serious conversations we had with each other, and he wouldn't mind me saying this because we talk about it and we're close, is like he was too all in to the point where it was actually detrimental. Like he was so all in with lifting that he was like missing the forest through the trees. Like it was like he needed to take a step back and realize like you could find some balance. Like you don't have to be at the gym on Christmas morning. You can be with your kid on Christmas morning. And listen, I'm not saying don't train Christmas night. I'm saying give the kid the toys, hang out, make sure she's number one, make sure she knows she's number one. Then go to the gym. Like there's a way to do it, and there's a way, I don't want to say to not do it, because whatever works for you works, because you have to make that decision for yourself. But you can do it. You can have it all. You just have to make sure that you're cutting the right things. And I don't think those things need to be family. You can have balance and have all the things and have success.
So I think where they miss this is they put themselves in a position where they're creating more stress in their life than they really need.
Yeah.
Which then makes it hard to recover from the training.
That goes back to the whole idea of I have to train versus I get to train. If you can embrace the mentality like all of this stuff is a gift, and I think that mindset is better.
Yeah.
Like we're lucky, we're privileged to be able to get here and do this. So embrace that, and then it's just couple words being different, change your whole mentality.
So what was some of the other advice that you gave him when you were speaking to him?
Well, that I said, like, you need to focus on your family first, make sure the wife's happy, the kid's happy. And like I'm not saying don't prioritize your lifting, but like, just like I say, work hard on being better, not stronger. It's like the same thing, like make decisions that work for you. So, put that family first. And you're going to still see the benefits. Like he's not missed any training. He'll be the one to tell you. He tells me all the time, like, oh, you saved my life, this, that. I think he's going too far. But he's happier now. He's happy because he has that balance. He has everything. He's still competing at a high level. His numbers are up as high as they've ever been. His daughter sees him more. Like you can have it all. It's just you need kind of a plan. That's it. And he's not the only one. All my guys see it. They're all the same thing. Like my guys have good jobs. They're all fairly successful. It's an important thing. Like you said, my gym's in my house. So those guys become like, depending on their age, little brothers or in some case like children to me. And so it's important to see that they're succeeding inside and outside of the gym.
Well, being the person that runs that environment, right? When do you know it's time to release somebody to a different training crew?
We've had that plenty of times. Like I said, without getting into too many specifics, certain things I don't tolerate. And it's never personal, because you don't have to like the guys you train with. I mean, I'm generally like most of my guys, but there are certain things in certain instances where either the fit isn't right. Like even my brother came and trained with me for a little while, and just like the fit wasn't right. So he trains separate now. But we've had guys who, outside of the traditional like no call, no shows and me just getting frustrated and booting you, there's some people whose lifestyle and choices just don't fit what we're doing there. And I have to say, like, hey, you know, maybe you should find a different spot to train, like not with malice, but like this is just not the right spot for you. And that's okay. Some people have left my gym and we're still friends. We still train together. It's just like better if we're not there together every single day. So,
well, it's that's how you keep your crew moving forward.
Yes.
Because the one leads to two, leads to three, you know, it's got a ripple effect.
And environment is everything, especially in multiply. Like you want to have a good environment and you want to trust those people because let's face it, your life's in their hands. Like one good thing, when I did go down, when you seemed like that bar never even come close to touching the ground, who knows, it could have been worse, but my guys are on it. They're quick. I trust them with my life and that's the way it should be. So you want guys there who care about your well-being, not just about your numbers.
So then how does it go? How do you go about, or does it just organically happen, building new people in?
I wish I had more new people. It's been hard recently. It's been hard to find like motivated, hardworking people. And we had to make a decision, sort of my guys and I together, like, do you want warm bodies? And as of right now, the answer is no. I don't just want someone in there who's not in, because then they're just in the way. Like I want people who are there who want to get better, not just to train. Now that doesn't mean you have to be strong. Like we have guys in there, like I told you about earlier, the guy who just had never really trained came there. He's very excited to be squatting 400 pounds, but he wants to be strong. He wants to be there. He cares about the people there. He fits the dynamic of our squad. And that matters more than, you know, someone who could be strong who just doesn't fit. So it's been hard to find motivated people who really want to be there, really want to show up and are there for the right reasons recently. But I've been through it before. It's ebbs and flows. I'm sure eventually something will happen. I'll go to a meet or someone will reach out or someone will move to the neighborhood or someone will graduate from college. Like it's always something. So someone will show up.
Well, I hear the same thing from everybody at this point. You know, it's harder to find. You know, and it's the advice I would have is don't bring people in out of desperation.
Exactly. And that's the one thing that I was just saying, like, you don't just want warm bodies. It's not worth it. You might have to travel. Like I said, the reason I went to Delaware that day is because they had a bigger squad. I wanted to take a squat. I didn't have as many people where I felt safe. So if I got to get in the car and drive, what's the worst that happens? I get a nice meal, hang out with my friends and lift weights, and a different monolift's going to make me better anyway. So just instead of considering it a negative, just look at the opportunities it presents rather than the challenges.
There's another topic I want to get into, but before we get into that topic, because that's probably when people are going to drop, right? I have these 3 prepared questions I wanted to put out there.
That's exciting.
This is interesting, right? Because I actually really thought about these, right? Because I'm listening to all this other stuff that you're in. And this is not going to be an easy one for you to answer, so it's going to be fun. If you had to cap your training at 2 hours per week, what would you do?
Oh, shit. 2 hours in a week?
2 hours. Well, it's multiply. Let's say 4. We'll double it. We'll say 4. Because there's warm-ups and shit with gear and stuff like that.
Damn. I mean, I guess you got to squat and bench max effort. I don't know if I need to deadlift, but I'm going to want to. Oh, shit. That's going to be hard. I mean, I guess I'd do 3 days. I'd have an upper body day. Squat, heavy. Probably skip some warm-up sets to try and save some time. Maybe squeeze my deadlift. I don't think I'm going to have a lot of time to deadlift, but we're going to have to be efficient with our deadlifts like I used to be when I'd pull some singles after. Make the newer guys set that up so I don't waste time loading. I got people for that. I got 3 kids. I can make them do that. Bench day, I think I'd be all right. I can bench fast. I think I'd be able to still, if I gave myself 90 minutes, I think I'd get a shirted bench workout in and at least a secondary and accessory movement in an hour and a half. And then that 3rd day, as much as I'd love to squat more, I feel like I still need to do the rest of my body. So I'd have to have like back and shoulders and all that. So maybe I'd do an hour and a half lower, hour and a half upper, and an hour of blazing hot accessories. And I'd be miserable.
Yeah. If the whole process since your first competition to the last competition, if this one you're gonna have to think about too, though, these are thought-provoking questions, right? So if that whole process, that whole 15, 20 years, whatever it's been, if it was easy, what would it look like?
If everything came easily?
If it was all easy, what would it look like?
It's going to sound weird, but it kind of was easy for me. Like, I don't know. I just was surrounded by not easy in terms of the work wasn't easy, but like I didn't really have to struggle too much. I stayed pretty much injury free. I'm learning just right now what it's like when it's not easy. I was on smooth set. Like when I started Raw, everything went great until I got hurt. And then I got lucky. I transitioned to multiply and then everything went fairly well. I went 23, then 25, then 26, then 27 each year in terms of totals. And then Unlimited came out, went 28, 29. It's only right now that I'm learning how to cope with when things aren't easy. So it took a long time before I really had to face these challenges. So it probably wouldn't look that different from what it was, except that right now, I'm dealing with what is it like when things get hard? I've lost a lot of training partners. I mean, I lost Magnavita, which was a big blow because he was the guy who was chasing me. I had Jenks there with me for a little from Westside. It was cool to have someone who could out deadlift me. And now a lot of the guys who've been with me for years, they're around my age. So I'm 39, turning 40. Those guys were a couple years older. So I lost the long-term training partner. So that's been a challenge. The quad injury has been a challenge. So only right now am I having to learn how to make tough decisions, how to prioritize my training, how to deal with the fact that I might not have enough guys to go heavy every Saturday. So I don't know. I think if things were easy, I was pretty lucky. And it was pretty easy for me. I had great people, a great coach from a young age. I was surrounded by all the right people. I met people who gave me gear before I needed to buy it. I found a multiply gym where everyone knew everything and was able and willing to teach me. So I got lucky. But now I'm having to, it's almost hard because when things don't get hard until you're at the end, it's challenging and it's hard to keep motivated to keep pushing. So I don't know. It's more like, what do I do now that things have gotten hard? That's the challenge.
Well, it still took a decade to get hard.
Yeah, I was lucky. Like I said, I got very lucky. I was
a decade.
Yes,
though. I mean, you got to think of beginners that are looking forward. Yeah.
And I had the right people believe in me at the right time. Like, there's always something. Like Rita West came up to me at like a Raw meet I was doing, and like invited me out to do a seminar before I even thought I was worth anyone listening to. And then I went out there and made me feel like, oh. And she's like, well, you could be great at this if you just did this. And then someone who I think is a great lifter, Raw and multiply, telling me I could be great is sometimes all you need to hear. So then I did a multiply meet and totaled something. And she's like, that's such and such all time. And it was around that time where I'm like, so I've had the right push, the right people, the right gym. My wife's always been supportive. I've always had the right team around me. So yeah, it was easy for a long time.
If you woke up tomorrow and you had 20 million in your account, that's legit. Right. So 20 million dropped in there. That's yours. What would you do?
Well, this is super exciting. I can keep it powerlifting related because I'm bit like I'm.
Well,
still,
this is your in total life. I mean, it's enough money.
Oh, yeah. Well, then I'm still nothing's changing in terms of powerlifting. I've always wondered. So like, if I had 20 million and my wife would allow me to, like, what would it look like if we had one meet where there was like, call it a $500,000 cash prize? Like if I could host one, because I've always wondered with powerlifting, like we get the niche athletes and all, but like, what would it look like if all the freaks that were out there in strongman, all the freaks that were out there, like, maybe not the main NFL players, because 500,000 is not going to draw them, away from, the Packers. But like something like that, I would love to see what would happen and what potential really could be. So that would be like my powerlifting lottery goal. Outside of that, I would probably still teach, but I don't know if I would want to be a day-to-day teacher. I'd probably be the cool substitute or something like that. I'd probably not be taking trips to Florida anymore because I wouldn't have to worry about finishing this 25-year sentence and worrying about my retirement with 20 million. So I'd probably be living in Central Florida. I'd be training with Danny Bell and Danny Tinachero and Alan and those guys because I'd definitely relocate myself down to Central Florida. But outside of that, no huge goals. My wife would be happy. she wouldn't have to work or anything. She'd be living the dream, and Botox and facials or whatever she likes to spend her money on would keep her very happy. But yeah, that's simple goals. But in terms of like if I could host, because I've always wondered, because there's some mutants out there, some farm boys or some strongmen, like what could they do, or even the Raw. Like
I wonder what the money would have to be.
Yes,
right.
I think if it was $1 million, you'd have like
Oh, you're going to pull.
Think of the raw lifters who are out there that just don't have a reason for whatever reason, because raw exploded, and I love raw. Like, think of like if Dan Bell, because he did the one multiply meet I went down there for and I watched. It was like, he was like a mutant. He totaled 26, like joking around and drinking beers. Like, and he would have squatted 12 if he didn't blow his belt off, and he was just in briefs. I mean, the guy's a mutant. Like, but if there's $1 million on the line, like, what does he squat? I don't know. And there's plenty of other freaky, strong, raw guys who, or take all those big pullers who are pulling like 1,000 pounds now. It's like becoming like a thing. What could those guys squat if they learned how to use a squat suit and a bench shirt?
I mean, that big enough number is going to pull people from hell. It's going to pull drug tested people into taking shit.
Yeah, well, Blaine Sumner is going to be like, fuck it, I'll throw on a multiply. I guess so, and squat 14. Like, so I've always wondered what it would take and what it would look like and where would the numbers go. Oh my God, like if someone challenged Hoff, like what would he be able to do if someone like a Blaine Sumner came out and was looking like they could total 32?
Oh, I didn't think about that because it's
not rising tide raises all ships. So like even the ones who are already great and multiply, like maybe Jimmy Kolb decides, I guess I'll squat and deadlift. What does that look like? Because I know he knows how to lift because he was a full power guy. So like what if he goes 1050, 1400, 700? Like the potential is crazy. So that would be my powerlifting side of the $20 million payday.
Okay, now for the fun question.
All right.
Now for the good one. Whereas this will be interesting because Owen, make a note of the timestamp on this one because I'm very interested to see how many people are going to drop off as soon as we start talking about this. But I'll preface this by saying, prior to COVID, and this is not about COVID, but prior to COVID, I paid zero fucks attention to anything political. I didn't watch the news. I squatted and trained and did my business. That's all I fucking did. Yeah. And then I got pulled into a rabbit hole, like most people did during that time. But also being somebody that's owned a business for 25 years, I've had to make decisions that impact people outside of myself. And I've learned from my mistakes over a period of time that if I have to make a decision that's big like that, I have to get all the information I can on the yes side of this argument and the no side of this argument, even if my bias is on one side.
Which is the best way to gain your information, just so we're clear in the first place.
I have to have everything. Yeah. Everything I possibly can have in front of me, but then I also have a framework that I have to make that decision within. Yeah. The law. I mean, I can't do illegal shit to be able to get away with it, and I can't go kill the person that's, there's certain things. There's rules. Like there's basically rules.
You have to exist in society. Right? Yeah.
So when all this starts going sideways and fucking all up, the only thing I know how to do from being a business owner is here's X situation. Look at this side as deep as I can, and then look at this side. Look at both sides as deep as I possibly can, which is exhausting, by the way, because not all sources are actual sources, right? And just go down this big rabbit hole. But I was still doing this within a context of being taught civics when I was in 8th grade. What was frustrating to me is side conversations I would have with people that weren't doing what I was doing, going down both rabbit holes, because a lot of things are way more complex than people make it out to be.
Especially with social media, there's so much confirmation bias because you only see everyone agrees with me, but that's just what you see.
That's just what you see, right? And it's every issue that I went down ended up being like, fuck, this is not what any party's saying. It's different. Like the core here, and same thing in business, by the way. Yeah. Because somebody would say, oh, you need to get rid of this person, or you need to keep this person. Then I get down to the actual, what's the actual issue? And it's like, it wasn't that, and it wasn't that. This is the issue I have to decide. Where these side conversations, I'm hearing things, and I'm like, dude, it doesn't work that way. Like our government is not the way it goes. This is not how it's structured. It does not work this way. There's like a constitution. There's all these things in place. There's checks and balances.
Government has rules. And
there's rules, right?
There's a system to this.
So for all those people that were driving me fucking insane with no bias, just please explain basic fucking government of the United States of America so people understand at a basic level. You know the little cartoons I used to have when I was little? Like, it's a bill, and it would like jump around the steps.
Yeah, a little
I don't think they got any of that.
Rocks, they missed that episode.
I think they missed a lot, right? So this is what you teach.
Well, a couple things. You're doing the right. Like, first off, every issue should be looked at from both sides. Like, that's the first thing I teach my kids. Matter of fact, a lot of the projects that we do, you actually have to look at it and examine it from three sides: left side, right side, neutral. And I'll like show you articles. We show how to do it. We go through examples. My first activity every year is an activity I call like perspective, because perspective is all a big part of this. We talk about confirmation bias. Well, your perspective, I take them outside and give them a camera. And then what they have to do is they have to take pictures that are accurate, but also not. So to give you an example, like if I put this can really far away from me and you take a picture where I'm in the background, I'm smaller than a can of Monster. Am I really? And the kids say, no. I'm like, well, is that picture a lie? And they don't know what to think. And then we get into the idea that like the idea of news sources are to manipulate you. You're manipulating perspective, and everything's a product, everything's for sale. So looking at both sides is obviously important. And people just love to be right. So since this is a lifting podcast, I'll put it like this. When people ask lifting questions, a lot of times, like we talked about earlier, they're asking them so that they can get the answer that they seek. Well, it's the same thing when you look at politics. People don't go searching for information, looking at both sides. They go searching for something that agrees with them. So whatever it is, if you're talking business, if you search something with the goal of finding something that supports your point of view, you're going to find it. And then you're going to feel right. But if someone else is searching for something that supports their point of view, they're going to find it. And they're going to feel right. So then what you have is these two people who both feel like they have this authority in an argument because they have pieces of advice or pieces of data that support what they say. All right, so that's kind of what you're probably running into. In terms of like civics and how things are supposed to run, yeah, I don't think a lot of people know. I know that my students don't. We get into that.
I know they don't.
Yeah, we get into the idea. I've heard a lot of people say like, oh, we need to fix this constitution. Well, I don't think we need to fix it or rewrite it. We just need to read it. It's very clear. I got it tattooed on my leg so people can see it. But my kids, I mean, most of them will fail the citizenship test. Their parents will too. And just like I say that, I said earlier, like lifting, you get to lift. It's a privilege. A lot of people overlook the fact that like we're lucky, like we were born lucky. We're in a country where we have rights, we have freedoms, we have certain liberties, and that's taken for granted by a lot of people because they don't know, number one, what those rights and freedoms are. You hear people say all the time, freedom of speech is a big one. Like, well, I have freedom of speech. Accurate. But freedom of speech isn't freedom of consequence. If I go on here right now with you and I start talking shit on my school district and say the Board of Education is a bunch of assholes, they're not. My board's actually cool. You guys are all right. The rare chance. Actually, they might watch because they watch all my lifting shit. So they might watch. So if you're watching, good looking out, guys. They take care of me. They let the school watch when I was on the WPO when they streamed it, like the whole school watch, which was fucking awesome. And I dropped an F-bomb like an idiot. So that's what's going to happen.
Hey, what's going to happen?
And they didn't say anything. So, losing my train of thought a little bit, but so that's how things are supposed to work. But not everyone gets that. They don't get that like government is a process that you don't get to change. You can't just do what you want. You're not right because you can find some pieces of information that agree with you. And my kids are pretty good about it. So kids understand it. But I can give you a lot of examples of things that are frustrating for me as a teacher because parents, not all parents, but a lot of parents don't want their kids to think for themselves. They just want to like, we're this is what we believe. They use the universal we, which makes it challenging to be a teacher because your kids probably don't agree with you. Because what's important to you when you're 12, 13, the age group I teach is going to be not the same things that are important to you or me. And rather than letting them learn how things are supposed to function, they want to tell them how they want things to function. Everyone focuses from this, like they look at it, how does it impact me, not how's it supposed to work? And I think that's like a big thing. So in terms of civics, do I think a lot of people know? Like most people won't be able to tell you who their members in the House of Representatives are, let alone what they do. Most people, if they vote, which is only about half the country anyway, just sort of like, and just do their thing. They can't tell you how things operate or how they're supposed to operate or that you have freedom of speech, but that doesn't mean you're not going to get fired from your job for saying something that they don't like. You have all these rights, but you don't truly understand them. And so, I don't know. It's not that hard to teach to 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, but their parents sometimes, that can be challenging.
So if you had to give a summary on, let's just say it's not really federal because federal plays into state, you know, it's, what we have the different, you know, the Senate, you know, the House of, you know, Representatives, then you have the Supreme Court, right? And then the president.
Yeah. So you got three branches there.
So in
it's
general,
not that hard. Executive, legislative, judicial. It should be simple.
And that's kind of like mirrored
when
you get to a state level, just with governors and so forth, right?
There's still three branches.
Very, in a quick summary, explain the rules of what each of those are at a federal level and then a state level.
Well, they would be the same, just on so if I take federal, like the legislative branch, they made it real simple for you. Their job is to legislate, which means to make laws.
Yeah, so I'm sorry to laugh.
I'm laughing too, because they are the people who make the laws. Now, the president, who they very conveniently call the executive branch, is there to execute that, to make sure the laws are followed, but also to sort of like double check and make sure that we like the laws. They have veto power. They can make sure that it's in the best public interest. They're like the head coach, you know, not the assistant coaches. That's like your legislative branch. Like, they are there to make sure everything is functioning. They're also like a figurehead. They also have to be able to make snap decisions, because honestly, just like anything else, we're a democracy, which is great, but you ever have to make a quick decision, you don't want a democracy. So the executive has certain limited scope of powers to make the executive decision. So if you're talking powerlifting, it's like the guy who runs the crew. All right. You want everyone's opinion, but sometimes you got to say, fuck it, we're squatting with chains today. Why? Because that's what we're doing today.
Yeah.
Like, we're just making the executive decision. And then I think sometimes the most tripped up, because it's just been weird for the past couple of decades, the judicial branch, all their job really is supposed to be is to sort of make sure that the first two branches aren't fucking up, and that the Constitution is being appropriately interpreted. But what you're seeing a lot of is a lot of like bench legislation, where the judicial branch wants to sort of like make laws. Now, they don't make laws because, again, we covered the legislative branch legislates, but they can, because of like the idea of judicial review and things. So if they can say something like, let me think of an example. If they can say a Supreme Court decision is unconstitutional, then the reverse is true. Then something becomes legal. You could take anything. You could take overturning DOMA and making gay marriage legal. You could take, you know, anything really. I take my kids to DC for this every June. I take a trip down. I'm constantly at the Supreme Court. I was down there this last June, the day that they struck down Roe versus Wade. So there's all protests and this, that, and the other. And the kids are asking me a million questions. And I have to say, like, well, this is what it really was. They didn't make abortion legal or illegal. That's what the news is telling you. All that really was to say was that a previous Supreme Court decision was inappropriately using the words of the Constitution. Basically, nothing changes because the 10th Amendment says states got to make certain decisions. So that's really what it is. The whole thing sounds really complicated, but if you take a step back, it's federal government gets to do certain things. State government gets to do the rest of them. And the state government operates the same way, only on a smaller scale. They still have a executive, legislative, judicial. Just call it a governor instead of a president, and you're right there. So I don't know what's so hard for people to understand. My 7th graders get it by the time they graduate, but at some point it seems to leave us.
It was surprising to me. And you know what? I'm guilty of it leaving because I just didn't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I had no reason to give a fuck. And I'm really trying hard now to not give a fuck again, because there's a way better life to be in. Right. So you just avoid, you know, the biases and stuff like that. And it really was like, Wendler used to say this years ago, and this is before ESPN started giving their own spin on things. But if it was really important, we'd see it on ESPN.
Exactly.
You know,
but now it's
not true anymore.
Yeah.
But you know, I'm like, that's the greatest thing ever. So I just avoid all the stuff.
I walk a fine line between giving a fuck but not letting it impact me. So like, I care. I'm watching. I have to. It's my job. I have to be aware of what's going on. But I just have to also realize, like, most things are not going to change my day-to-day life. So if it doesn't, it's not really my problem.
I think your example of the can and the picture is perfect.
That's a great lesson. But let me tell you, this year I do that, and I've got parents calling the school, and they're real mad at me, and I got in trouble because one of the things that I did, And if the Board of Education is listening, you're going to be pissed at me because you had to deal with the fallout of this. But I had 2 quotes up about Roe v. Wade because, we start school in September. That shit happened this summer. One of them was intentionally polarizing. I chose a quote from Ron DeSantis, clearly. We'll use my right hand. All right, very much about how it was a paraphrasing, but a win for families. And then I chose a Bernie Sanders quote very intentionally because polar opposite. And it says something like, this is a loss for families. Again, paraphrasing the tweets.
Yeah.
So by the time the parents hear that, their version of the story is I'm showing tweets from choose your character because some parents were mad about this one. Some parents were mad about this one. No one took the time to take a step back and realize the whole reason I was showing that was to show the kids that neither one of these guys are necessarily right. Neither one of these guys is necessarily wrong. You're entitled to your opinion. Now, how you get that opinion depends on a lot of things. Your own personal life, how you feel. There's a lot of things that go into that. Your perspective. That's going to help you establish your opinion. So the whole lesson's about the idea of like what's right or wrong isn't as easy as black or white. It depends on who you are, where you're from, what's right for you, what might be right for you, might be wrong for me. Everything in life is perspective, and understanding that is important. And then we go right into Columbus and how, like, is he a good guy, a bad guy? Same fucking thing. It depends. If I'm the king of Spain, I love that guy. Rich, powerful, well, cool. Native Americans aren't my problem. I'm rich and got gold. Now, if I'm like someone who gets my fucking hand chopped off because he didn't like me, I might not like him. Mm-hmm. So everything's perspective. It's just that simple.
You would think.
It's not.
Where it's the general advice I put out is whatever, we all have biases, right? Perspective, better word. I like that word better. We all have perspectives, but why do we have those? I don't think we ask ourselves enough why we have those. And then whatever the issue is, even if it is in powerlifting, because powerlifting has drama as well.
Absolutely.
There's always
it's
something.
It's always the same thing. It's just your perspective. What you think is right or wrong depends on your perspective and how you came to get to where you are.
But when there's that drama, so let's say it is in powerlifting, there's that drama, people will fall to their one side, but not pause, not do it like I would as a business owner with a business situation. Not pause and say, okay, now wait a minute. Like, what is this side? Let's remove all of this clutter. Just get rid of that for a minute. What is this? And then how can I understand what that is? Now, sometimes you get really fucking confused. Yeah. Right? On some issues. Non-powerlifting issues, you get really confused. Powerlifting issues are much more cut and dry. Yeah. Way more cut and dry.
Although, weirdly enough, I struggle more with powerlifting issues because I think I'm closer to it. Like, it matters to me. It's harder to turn a blind eye to it. So, like, you're right. They're less cluttered, but I feel like sometimes they're more challenging because I have a vested interest in it.
You do. And
whereas with the government, I'm like, fuck it.
Well, in powerlifting too, the frustration comes because most of these are very easy to fix, but they won't get fixed. Yeah. And I know that because I've been in it since 82. Yeah. Right. The issues today are no different than they were before. Yeah. They're just defined a little differently.
Well, and sometimes people just like to complain too in powerlifters. I made a post the other day I thought was funny because I was cleaning out my gear closet and I laid out all my bench shirts. Everything from I have a couple HD Blast shirts and I laid out the denim and then the single ply and I just laid them all and I put it below a picture of evolution. So you got a Australopithecus up the Homo habilis, Homo sapiens sapiens. It's just like that. And I didn't put any caption. And then people are mad at the bench shirt. Those bench shirts are stupid. I'm like, you're missing the point.
No caption.
You're missing the point. It's never.
No,
it's not for you then.
Yes. No, I get that's the stuff that kind of drives me crazy.
But if you think it's stupid, I have a very quick solution for you. Don't do it. Then it's fine.
Well, that's
you don't want to bench the band shirt. Don't do that. But I still don't like it.
Interesting comparison, right? Because if it's something that you politically don't agree with that may be in your state, it's very hard to relocate to another state, right? Yeah. But in powerlifting, there's something that you don't agree with in a certain federation. It's pretty easy just to enter the other one. But where I think people mess up with the powerlifting thing is how does that change your recovery with your rehab moving forward? You kind of already know the next meet you want to do. Yeah. It's already there. Any of the other shit that's happening makes no difference to what you're going to do on your next Saturday squat session or the 1,500 reps of back that you're going to do on a Tuesday. It has no influence on any of that. None. Unless you let it.
Right.
And that's where I think the problem becomes is a lot of people let it and then it becomes a stress,
Yep.
which creates cortisol, which now you have to recover from
physical, actual, yeah.
Which can fuck you up, make your training harder to recover from.
What do I tell my daughter who's 19? I think I always say, she'll be listening because she listens. I say something to the effect of like, if you wouldn't ask someone for advice, then their opinion doesn't matter. It's like, what do you mean by that? I'm like, well, if it's someone I would ask for advice and they have an opinion on something that I'm doing, it probably matters. I should listen. But if it's not someone who I would actively seek advice from, then why would I care what they think? Because if I cared what they think, they'd be someone who I'd ask advice from. So if I don't care about their advice, I can't be impacted by their opinion. They can have it. That's fine. But it won't stress me out any. So there's plenty of people who have told me my training's stupid, this, that. And I'm like, oh, well. Now, if like, let's say, I don't know, let's say Danny Tinachero messaged me and said, I think you're fucking up with something that you're doing. I'd call him and be like, all right, let me hear it. Because his opinion matters. You know, any of those guys down there, Alan, Tara, any of like any of the people who I hold in high regard, I'm going to listen.
Well, they have context too, because they've seen you train. They've seen you compete.
I'm either going to listen, or I'm going to listen and then be like, I hear you. I'm not saying you're wrong. This is why I'm doing it, though. Because I've had that conversation with Hoff has told me a couple times, and like, you can't argue that he's the strongest. So like, I can't use the old, well, I have better numbers excuse there, but I can say like, listen, I understand and I hear you, but part of the reason I'm doing what I do is because of this external stimulus that I'm also dealing with, and I'm using lifting for that. So either I have a reason for doing it or I'm listening.
How much longer do you have until you have the 25 years teaching?
Let's see, I got 17, so 8 years, yeah.
So it's a good friend of mine, Vincent DeCenzio. He's got months left now. Yeah. He's like, just waiting. Like it's almost over.
The job's not as easy as it used to be for a lot of the reasons we were just talking about when you said people will tune out. It has become very polarizing, and even with parents, parents fight me now. Like my son would never do that. If I make a call about discipline, and I'm like, I'm the easiest going guy in the world. Matter of fact, if I called you, I probably should have called you weeks ago. But I don't wake up in the morning looking for problems. I'm generally trying to handle my business. And instead of it being like, well, I'm going to fix it at home, it's become more like militant. And we're going to fight against you instead of like collaborating with you. Not all parents, but more and more these days. And it gets exhausting. So it is. I'm not going to be one of those teachers that complains about the pay. The pay is fine. The benefits are great and all that stuff. However, the support from home and the stuff that we have to deal with has changed so much.
That's what he was saying.
I'm not allowed to like have certain conversations or put up polarizing tweets to teach with, but I'm expected to be like a human bullet shield if the time comes. You don't want me talking to your kid about politics. I'm not allowed to give. I used to give this test where the kids answered 100 questions and they ranked them. And all it did was it told them roughly how their views aligned. So if you took it and, you generally lean left, it's going to tell you you're a moderate Democrat or a moderate Republican or a libertarian or whatever it is. Well, I'm not allowed to give that anymore. Even though I'm not answering it. I'm not telling them anything. It's data that exists and voting patterns. It's an assessment, but I'm not allowed to do that because they don't want Johnny to know that he might lean Democrat because their family is this. And it's stuff like that short-sighted way of thinking that creates people who are going to grow up and be a pain in your ass because they have confirmation bias.
Well, if
you're limiting their perspective.
You're a parent, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, if that was something that my kids had, which I don't believe they did, I don't fucking know. It didn't come on the radar.
Yeah.
Then that can create a conversation at home. Yeah. Because if you're engaged as a parent, which you should be, right, with what your kids are learning and so forth, then that becomes a conversation that opens up dialogue to speak more.
And it's okay to have discourse. Like I think it's healthy. Even with your kids, like if you're, and listen, a lot of times, like the way that should go is like, let your kid take the test, let them come home and let them tell you, hey, I'm a Democrat because, and then have a conversation. Well, that's okay. But did you ever think about this? Explain the reason why you think the way that you do. And they're like, well, I didn't think about that. Maybe I'm not. I'll ponder that some more. And then it's a perfect situation. You had a nice conversation with your kid. You're involved in their education. You talked about school with a middle schooler who generally, when you ask them how school was, they say, fine. Like that would be more helpful. And then they know you're hearing them and you're having a conversation. Because honestly, they want to argue with you anyway. Why not argue about something productive instead of getting them to arguing about why the room's not clean or the dishes aren't done? Like,
well, it could invite the parents to look deeper into whatever that said issue is.
Yeah.
Right? Because there could be issues that we disagree on, but you're not a dickhead.
Yes.
Right? So I'm not going to have a conversation with somebody that has issues that I disagree on that's just going to use talking points from the media. That's part of what was bothering me.
Yeah, and I think that's a social media problem. Because like I said, there's like, well, I remember growing up, my dad's friends being over, the ones you call like my Uncle Mark or my Uncle Andy. They're like just his buddies growing up. And I can remember them disagreeing and like good-naturedly making fun of each other or giving like gag gifts and shit like that. Like no one was getting their feelings hurt. It was just like they were disagreeing, but from that discourse, you can both grow.
Exactly.
If I understand your point of view and you understand my point of view, we're not going to all of a sudden switch. You're not going to come to me and I'm not going to come to you, but at least either we might go like this, or if nothing else, at least I have a better understanding. You said like it's nice to look at things from both points of view. Well, every single good lawyer out there, if you're a prosecutor, you could argue that case as a defense attorney if you're good at it, or vice versa.
Well, and if you can get past the media talking points, which most people can't, because they've not looked more, right? So if I'm stuck in a conversation and I can't get past what that is, I'm not having this conversation because I'm not educated enough to even have it. Yeah. If it's really important, give me some time and let me go look. But if you can get the people that actually know on left or right, deeply what the issue is, you will learn.
Yes, absolutely.
You will learn, and you will actually learn why there is the problem in the first place.
And in some cases, you might learn, and it might reinforce your own beliefs. You're going to learn more about why you thought the way that you thought. You're not even going to go closer to them at all. It might confirm everything you thought you believed.
The one thing I can guarantee they'll learn on either side is they were lied to.
Yes. Yeah.
Guarantee.
It's very hard to find legitimate information out there. That's one of the first, again, like I said, when my early days, we teach perspective. And another thing I teach is research. And when I say research, people use the word research. Oh, I researched it. Typing something in on Google is not research. But there is research. Like that's the beginnings of research. That's nice. That's a good start. You can read a Wikipedia article and then follow it down and look at those sources and maybe dig a little bit deeper. But having those conversations about how to find accurate information is challenging. I mean, when you live in a world of the internet and the modern internet, especially with like AI and the crazy shit we're dealing with now, with like kids can have their computer write their paper. Then we were catching them. And then kids were having the computer write their paper and being like, make sure there's 5 spelling mistakes and at least 10 grammar mistakes. Like they have that at their fingertips. But with that, it's almost like you're inundated with so much information that finding the truth becomes the challenge. So finding good information is now the challenge. So we have plenty of it, but it's almost like too much. So
how do you have that conversation with your 19-year-old?
It's the same. It's a challenging conversation to have. You have to explain that to them. Do your best to show them where the real information is. But again, when you have a 19-year-old, one thing you learn is they're always right.
I know. I have teenagers.
You're always wrong. Yeah. But honestly, good, honest, open conversations. And the biggest thing I can say that you do that's worked for me with my students and my own kids is not acting like you're always right. Like when you're wrong, sometimes just acknowledging, listen, I don't know. I'll do my best to figure it out, or you can figure it out. We can talk about it. Like, I don't know what the right answer is here. That right there, as much as like a lot of teachers miss that, like, well, that means I'm not the expert. Well, you can still be a teacher. Sometimes a good expert or a good training partner can tell you what they don't know. Like admitting your weaknesses is a strength, as weird as that might sound. Like I'll tell you right now, programming is not my strength. I have people that help me with all that. I can implement lifts. I can execute lifts. Knowing why I do it, it's not my strength. I have plenty of people in my corner, though, who know those things and can answer those questions because I made sure of that. So knowing your strengths is almost not as important as knowing your weaknesses or limitations, because you can grow if you can acknowledge them.
Were there any topics that you wanted to discuss I didn't bring up?
No, I think we covered pretty much everything. You had your homework done.
Well, I only looked down at this like once. Oh, no, there is. We need to talk about the documentary.
Oh, yeah. I can't wait.
Yeah, so we don't, because I had Dave on here with Anthony last week or something like that. So they mentioned that you were in that, which I didn't know until they actually brought that up, which is kind of cool because it's interesting. Now I'm very intrigued, and I don't know what you can and can't say, but now I'm very intrigued.
Neither do I. Like, I don't. Full honesty here is like Fahey, I love the guy. He's a genius. He knows everything. I mean, talking to him is like reading an encyclopedia, if that makes sense. He's just a very intelligent dude, and he can talk endlessly. But he's also smart enough. Like we weren't given like this is what the documentary is or is going to be. I was just followed around for a little while. He filmed a lot of things, and then he hung out at my house for like 3 days, and we talked. But we talked about so much that if you were to ask me what I think the documentary is going to be about, I'd have guesses. Couldn't tell you. But I do know it was awesome to talk to him. And it's really, for me, as just a guy who just loves powerlifting and all that it's done for me. And like I have these guys in my house. I run this gym. It's like I love the sport for what it is. Like I said, I'm lucky to do it. I don't have to do it. So to be included in something like that was super cool. I was very excited to be. It was a blatant and obvious yes. Like, will you be part of this? It was the easiest yes I could ever give, because to be held in like such a high regard that I'm in a film that has, Anthony, has Dave, has me, has Chanel from Canada. So like it's got like legitimately great lifters that I admire, and being a part of that was awesome.
From what I've pieced together, it's a film following lifters over a period of actually a longer period of time because COVID screwed everything up. So multi-years. So
he's got footage from 2018, 19. I mean, I guess it was like late 2020 when he spent the time at my house. I mean, he was like, but he was following me everywhere. We went to the boardwalk in Ocean City. He was at my house. He was at my gym. He filmed us lifting. So like, one thing I can't wrap my head around is like, I know how much he filmed me. So like I know how much I was in front of that camera, and Magnavita was in front of that camera, and I know how long those meets were, and I'm thinking like, I've seen West Side versus the World, and I love documentaries, so like I know the general length of the documentary, and what I cannot fucking I cannot wrap my head around like, how do you take
that much,
this vast amount of just content and turn it into something? I don't. It's insane.
Well, that's his skill.
Yeah,
right?
That's where it's like, and what it's going to look like is not going to be like anything I expect, because there's just so much that has to be put together.
So, it's crazy to think about, because it's with West Side versus the World. I was interviewed, and then my interview was like 3 hours, right? So you're like, no, wait a minute. Yeah. This isn't even really a part of the movie.
A blip, yeah.
It's just a blip, and
like
that was 3 hours.
He was down there with Magnavita, I think, for like 3-4 hours. And that was just questions about me.
Yeah.
And training.
And that could be 2 sentences.
Like that. And that could be, like 30 seconds of a movie that you pull out of there, like a sound blur. Like it's, so like I can't wrap my head around that. That is not something that like, I'm sure I'll love it. Because again, the simple fact that it's not out yet, because that guy doesn't do anything less than, like there's no room for mediocre in his world. He's like, I always say, moderation's for cowards. He is like the definition of moderation's for cowards. He's just only perfection.
Yeah.
So when he's done, it will be.
Well, I'm sure you have no more foresight on when it's going to be released than Dave had last week.
No, and I've to my credit, as much as I want to text him, what the hell, man?
Yeah.
I'm excited. Can you maybe share some of the outtakes? Like, no, I'm trust the process.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it will be cool. But it was an honor to be a part of, and I'm sure I'll love it when it's out.
Any I don't want to say parting advice, but any critical advice that you have for people who are watching this in regards to getting just into powerlifting or navigating powerlifting?
So getting into powerlifting is the greatest thing that you can do, whether you think you're going to be great or not, because it's like a parallel for life. And what I love most about the sport is that, unlike other sports, every single person, whether you are disabled, no matter what your challenge is in life, you can get better at it. And it's cool because you will get better at it if you put in a little bit of work, especially the early days. Like, I love that. I actually talk to my students about that. It's like the idea that if you do the work, you're going to get stronger. And that's good. It's a good feeling. There's nothing wrong with being stronger. I love the feeling. I love watching myself become better. So that's a cool thing about powerlifting. I love the sense of community. I love the fact that if you work hard, you get better. In terms of advice I would give, we were talking about it earlier about how like every generation benefits from the previous generation and how you can reach out. My biggest piece of advice to a newer lifter would be like, realize that. Don't be stubborn, because I was, and many people are. And I'm not saying don't ignore every gut instinct. Like, there's going to be a day where you want to do something crazy. Run with those days once in a while, because that's fun. And it's okay to make this sport fun. I love making it fun. But also be honest with yourself and know when you're having fun and know when you're trying to get better. Reach out to the right people for advice. The worst they can say is no. There's nothing wrong with reaching out to people. People reach out to me all the time. I know they reach out to plenty of top level lifters who will either give them the advice, be willing to take them on as clients. I mean, use the internet, but know that that sometimes is a blessing and a curse. I mean, follow the lifters and watch what they do. But sometimes, like when you're searching for things, you're not going to be able to find everything, or you'll find too much. So follow the right lifters, reach out to the right lifters, learn from the people who came before you. But honestly, just be honest with yourself and know why you're doing what you're doing. And I haven't always been the best at that, but I'm generally pretty honest with myself. And I think that's been helpful for me.
Now, the ones that are, say, 3 years in, 4 years in.
Oh, that's the tough point.
So, yeah. So what advice would you give to them on how to navigate powerlifting?
The first thing is, it's not all, sunshine and puppies. It's not all linear progression. You're going to have those tough days. But I would argue that getting through those tough days is that's what separates the good from the great, and eventually the great from the, the world class, is being able to deal with facing a plateau and knowing that you're going to have to work through it. You might even have to take a step back in order to take 2 steps forward, and doing it without loss of enthusiasm is important. That's the point where people start saying, I have to do this. Don't let yourself fall victim to thinking that this is a chore. Keep it fun. You might need to take a break. You might need to find some fresh things to do. If you're raw, maybe throw on a bench shirt. If you're equipped, maybe throw on a band shirt, maybe try something raw. Switch things up, keep it fun, keep things progressing. Because sometimes you're trying to bang that square peg into a round hole, then do a deadlift meet. Make your deadlift better. Find something that will allow you to make it fun and have some success, and then build off that success. Don't stay in a rut and just sit there and expect things to change because you just wait. Because that's how people get jaded, and it's they hit this plateau, and then eventually what they do is they just stop. And then you lose people. I think if I had to guess, would you say 3-4 years of a competitive powerlifter is probably if I were putting my money on it, I'd say for a competitive powerlifter, someone who starts, I'd say somewhere between 3 and 5 years is the exit ramp.
It's when the gains start to become hard. Yeah. And then when the gains start to become hard, all the sport drama becomes amplified.
Yeah.
Where I will argue it was always there. Yeah. But when things are easy and you're making progress.
I'm still making progress.
You don't care.
To look past.
Yeah.
I would say that's not the first, that's the second exit ramp in powerlifting. But once you get past that couple things, you get past it, but then you've also learned how to deal with it. So then the next exit ramp, you're going to make that 10-year mark. You're going to get there. You're going to be that's the first real challenge, that 3, 4, 5 year plateau time. And that's where a lot of people just give up rather than get tough. Yeah.
The best place to follow you, would it be Instagram?
Yeah, Instagram is my number one. Facebook too. Instagram is the PG-13 because I let students follow me. Facebook is where I'll be a little bit more liberal with my actual views in life and things like that because I don't have students follow me there. So depends on what you
control that.
How do I control
How do you control them not following you?
Oh, I can just not accept them on Facebook.
Okay.
Now, they can do the whole follow thing, but my thing is I will let them, they know that they're allowed to follow my Instagram. So I intentionally keep that politically neutral. Yeah. And I intentionally keep that just lifting and family stuff. You'll see me at Universal. You'll see me lifting weights. You might see some pictures of my dogs. That's the extent of that. Because if I'm going to allow, impressionable kids to follow, I need to make sure I'm setting a good example. Whereas on Facebook, I can see who follows, and I know, first off, Facebook kids don't generally like it anyway. No 12 and 13-year-olds have it. They're in the TikTok, Snapchat, whatever the hell, but they all have Instagram, so they all follow me there, and I think that's good. And I don't mind it. A lot of teachers won't do that. I don't want kids following me. I'm well, I think what I do is a good example for kids. I'm totally okay with them following and watching. And do you think that's good? Yes. Yeah, I think powerlifting and doing something like this and pushing myself and holding myself accountable. I think a lot of the lessons I can learn in powerlifting, a lot of these kids could take and use in different aspects of their life. And I think I showed you today, literally today, I got that email from a kid who told me that my story and my push athletically made him want to push, and he went to a 4-year scholarship and played soccer at UMass. Like, that wasn't my intention. That's not why I was doing it. But if that's a secondary benefit, is the kids see that and realize that they can push themselves too, then that's a pretty cool secondary benefit for my kids.
Big time. I mean, they're seeing you chase something that you're passionate about.
And passion's contagious.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. I mean, if you didn't have that, then I don't want to rant about that, but you're going to teach them to not have a passion about something?
Yeah, no. And I don't care what your passion is. Like, I make it a point to go to all my students' shit. And some of my favorite things make me laugh because, like, my favorite things that I go to is, like, I've been following these kids that I taught, and I can now go to their dance recitals, and they're not my students anymore. They're actually like 17, 18 years old and competing like nationally ranked dance competitions. I never miss. Now, am I a dancer? No. But can I see the work, the effort, the passion that goes into what they do? Yeah, same thing with, like, I got a girl who's like an Olympic level swimmer. Like, I can see that passion, and I don't care that it's not my sport. It's the idea that I know how hard they're working to be the best at what they're doing, and that's the part I think is cool. So I don't care if it's, obviously I go to the kids' football games and stuff like that, but like, that's easy. But like, I can even dance recitals, I go to their plays. I'm actually missing, it was Mean Girls this week. So if you're listening, any of my students who are in Mean Girls, this was important. So we had to miss that play, but I'm generally at everything. And I like watching them live out their passion.
I think we covered it.
There you go.
I'm trying to think of it because we just covered where to find you. So,
well, let's see. If the thing is live, learn, pass on, that's a motto I subscribe to as well.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you coming out. I appreciate the example that you're setting, with people. And more than that, I appreciate anybody that when people talk to me about them, it always comes back that he's a great guy. So when it's the sport of powerlifting and that echoes across different genres of the sport, that means a lot.
It means I'm doing something right. Now, listen, not always perfect. I've had my moments, but I will also tell you that if I have my moment, I'm generally pretty quick to acknowledge it and apologize for it. So I try. Nobody's perfect, and especially in this sport, like, you're going to have your ups and downs.
Yes.
But I try to generally appreciate the days that I got.
All right. So thank you again for coming out. Thanks to listeners, and we are done.
The only thing that I knew that I enjoyed in life was training.
Yeah.
And everybody has an exercise science degree. I looked at how saturated that field was, and I didn't think that I could be a whole lot different. It's not that it doesn't matter, but it's that as long as you have the intensity behind it, that's what makes the difference. It's not as much the specific movement